I think when the question was asked, should there be another one?
Yes.
It's not a case of should there be another one. The SNP is the largest party here. The most people voted for them more than anyone else, just in the same way that the most people voted for Theresa May in 2017 general election, and we're following that for the UK. So if most of the people of Scotland voted for the SNP on the basis of what they said, then that is what the people of Scotland want. Also, this argument, and this really winds me up, this argument that the SNP are the only people in Scotland that want independence is absolute rubbish. There are Tories, there are Labour, there are Lib Dem, there are loads of Greens as well, there are loads of just independent Scottish people that want independence for Scotland. So if you're looking at the fight for independence, I agree. I don't agree with the SNP approach. I don't think they should be basing it around Europe. I think that's a conversation that an independent Scotland has to have on its own once it gains its independence, because we have to respect the fact that there are a lot of people here that actually want independence from both unions. I can't understand why nobody can understand why you would want independence. It's a normal thing. Countries are independent all over the world.
Afternoon, folks. We started there that we clicked on question time as a jog your memory, I suppose, as to who I am. The lady who ranted about a year ago on the show got quite a little bit of coverage throughout social media. For anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Diane, and I am one of the original 45%. Yes, voters from 2014, activist, Facebook keyboard warrior, and as my mother would say, and you can see from that question time rant, overall just a general gobshite. This afternoon, I volunteered to take part in the rally brought to you by the Round Table, TRT, in order to bring you some information on the Digital Covenant, but mainly the idea behind the rally was a feeling for the need to bring people together, and certainly to bring ideas together. There is so much going on in the movement right now, and today we should have been in Elgin and hopefully in sunshine and marching. That was our AUOB calendar scheduled march for this year, but unfortunately due to lockdown that's no longer happening. So the guys at TRT alongside guys at Digital Covenant had the great idea to get as much people involved in the movement to try and put the messages out there of all the positive things that people are doing. So today we have tried to gather together a selection of people to talk about the various different things that we could look forward to in the future of an independent Scotland, to speak about the things that we need to plan towards for an independent Scotland, and also to speak about the various things that you're talking about out there. We can see on Facebook that there is lots and lots going on. We've got the launch of 2 new independence parties, I think, today for March 2021, all with the very serious pledge of trying to support, encourage the SNP to deliver on the manifesto pledges they keep making to us about getting independence. Now, I'm sure we can all agree that the one thing we would love to see on a manifesto from the SNP in 2021 would be a majority vote for the SNP is a vote to end the union, and that would start those negotiations. Now, I know that there's the pursuance of Section 30 and people have various issues and questions about that. There are many of us, including myself, who don't believe that a Section 30 is necessary. That brings us on to campaigns this week from Twa Auld Heids, who you'll be hearing from later. They've been running a Plan B week this week. Lots of people in the movement calling for Plan B. We have Peter A. Bell, the very well-known indie blogger, calling for #ScottishUDI. So there's all sorts of things going out there, and we wanted to try and bring some of that to you today. We've so much talent in the movement, and so many people that have done research on really important things over a long period of time, that will contribute to the independent Scotland that we build together. And I'm sure that you could all agree that by bringing people together, we can, in fact, achieve independence. So this afternoon, we've got a selection of people. We have Pat Leon from the Alliance for Independence to tell us all about the grassroots Yes movement party they're trying to build. Unfortunately, no one from ISP. We did try. Sorry about that, guys. We also have Ruth Watson from Scotland the Brand. She sat down and had a chat with us about her grassroots campaign and also why, you know, she would really, really love for us to get involved with that. We had David Younger in for a wee chat about universal basic income and the things that we need to look at with that. And we've also got some members from across the movement giving their personal perspectives on the day. All rounded up by Twa Auld Heids and various other bits and pieces that we can gather together. And we hope that you really, really enjoy the afternoon. I'm sure the one thing that you can all agree on today is that after 300 years of a union, we all need to make our own decisions now. We need to pull together. We need to use our talents. We need to use our determination, and we need to use that together. I don't know if you're aware of all the different things that are going on in the movement, and today we are only giving you a selection of them. But up until about 3 weeks ago, I wasn't aware of the fact that there are around 4 constitutions floating around for a suggestion for a new independent Scotland. I know more of Mark McNaught than anybody else's, but having these information in different places, written by different people, with no one knowing what it's about, we really want the Covenant team to try and pull you all together in that and pull all of it together. So the idea behind today is to try and pull everyone together and encourage them to join us by signing the Digital Covenant and automatically giving themselves a place in the Digital Assembly. Now, the idea behind the Assembly, as I say, is gathering all the ideas together. But if we had one place where we took every organisation, just for example, in the Indie movement, and we took every organisation and we said to them, you know, come, sign up to here. The one thing you have to commit to is an Indie Scotland, nothing else, and put all your ideas in there. Put them to the people. All the people sign, one place, one assembly, one place where we can look at the ideas, we can discuss these ideas, we can amend them, we can throw out the ones we don't like, we can keep the ones we do like, we can find people that have shared values, we'll find areas where we can join together on shared priorities, but more than anything else, with having all of us in one place, what we can do is that we can agree on things and arrive at consensus and deliver those to the Scottish Government, whoever that Scottish Government may be. And in that sense, we can deliver democracy to ourselves. If we were to reach the target of hashtag 3 million signatures that the Digital Covenant have set, very ambitious, I know. However, that target really needs to be reached, because if we do, that is the majority of Scotland. It's the majority of Scotland in one place at one time, able to get that one message out there. And after all this time of us dealing with all these issues in these fragmented groups that we have, we're not getting our overall message together, and we're not managing to work out as a country what it is that we want. So the Assembly idea and the Digital Covenant, and what leads to essentially the blockchain democracy, is that idea. And we are so lucky that we've had people in the movement that have given up their time, coders, volunteered, some of them you'll hear from today, to do this work over years. And the reason they did it was because they heard that this was what the movement wanted and this was what the movement needed. And now we have it. All we need to do is take it, grasp it, and use it. So I urge you folks to look at the website. I urge you folks to take a look at the live signing demo that is coming up from the team over the next week or so, I think. We'll wait and see for that, but we'll certainly put it out there. But more than anything else, we would urge you to sit back this afternoon, have a drink if you've got nice weather where you are, sit in the garden, chill out, and listen to all the interesting things that are coming your way in an independent Scotland. So first up, we've got Ruth Watson, who is here to tell us, or was here to tell me, all about the Keep the Scotland Brand campaign and how essentially that is a grassroots campaign. So it's something that we can all listen into and that we can all take on board and that we can all take forward together. I hope you enjoy it. I also hope that My fidgeting doesn't put you off too much, but I will say that during that interview, I had my cat jump up on my lap. And so all my strange jittering and moving around was due to trying to keep a cat quiet and not pop his head up on the screen. I'd have to say I'm very new to this. This is not my chosen career. I am not a broadcaster. I'm not an interviewer. I'm just a volunteer for the Covenant team. And I'm doing it to say thanks to the guys for building such a great system that we can really use. And I genuinely am going to be using my voice to sell. So I'll apologise in advance if you're going to see me a lot over the next few months, but I feel it's a really, really important thing for Scotland, and I hope that you guys do too. Anyway, down to Ruth. Catch you later. Afternoon, folks, and I'd like to say welcome to Ruth Watson from Keep Scotland the Brand. She's come to talk to us all this afternoon and tell us a little bit more about her campaign. Welcome, Ruth.
Hi, thanks for having me. Well, Keep Scotland the Brand was started a couple of years ago, and it is not my campaign. It's my idea, and I spearhead it, and I run it, and I do it on a completely voluntary basis from my kitchen table. Although at the moment I'm in our small cubbyhole office. But
okay.
It's our campaign, because without everybody backing it, without the remarkable, overwhelming support that the campaign has, not only from industry but from folk right across Scotland, from Dumfries and Galloway up to Shetland. There's people supporting the campaign and the ethos of the campaign. So it's not my campaign, it's our campaign.
Fantastic. So how many supporters do you have from the public? Do you have, and how do you register your supporters? Are they subscribers? Are they activists? How does it work?
It's actually one of those remarkably and delightfully anarchic situations where I have no idea. It's kind of like releasing butterflies into the world. So what I do know is that sometimes, some months, my Twitter account has a 1.2 million reach. So
wow, that's quite something.
Somebody somewhere is paying attention.
Yeah, and is that worldwide then? Can you tell that? Sorry, I'm not a user of Twitter really, so I don't actually know.
I'm a bit of a techno numpty. All I know is to click the analytics and I get some information coming up. But I know that it is an international campaign because I get people from across the world contacting me. The other day I had somebody from Hong Kong sending me photographs of Scottish produce on the what do you call it? Menopause brain. The other day I had somebody from Hong Kong sending me photographs of Scottish whiskies, clearly marked as Scottish whiskies, on in a Hong Kong airport. And there's a gentleman I know, actually one of the people who helped inform this campaign. I was lucky enough many years ago to live in Malaysia, and I had a friend.
Nice.
Yes, I had a friend who he had a multi-million-dollar budget for he was the buyer for the whole of Malaysia and Singapore for a supermarket.
Okay.
And he loved Scotland's brand, and so that was why when I saw that Scotland's name for quality and Scotland's distinctive name for its products was being sort of smothered by the Great British Campaign, and then when I also saw the threat to many of our products and our special food names from, for example, American deals, and that was evidenced in the Canada-Japan trade talks 2 years ago, when over 3,000 European Union products from across the continent of Europe were put forward for special legal name protections within those deals. And the UK government did not submit one name from across the whole of the United Kingdom. for protection. So currently we've got a trade deal as part of the EU. Currently we have a trade deal with with Canada and with Japan, but the legal precedent has been set and not one of our food names is protected in Canada or Japan. So going forward with Brexit negotiations, the US is very clear that they do not like place of origin food labels, and that they want the right to call, for example, for them to make their own shoddy examples of imitation Stornoway black pudding, for example. And so we would lose those legal protections. And once a reputation lost is very hard to regain. And once
Yes, of course.
Once trust is gone with our produce, it's very hard to get our reputation back. So Keep Scotland the brand was born because I was paying attention to the detail of what was going on around me, and seeing what those within the industry were saying. And I thought, actually, what we really need is to have a grassroots movement, because it's very difficult for industry, and it's very difficult for those trying to make the case for, you're trying to make an argument with, for example, the supermarket saying, could you please label our Scottish strawberries as Scottish? It's very hard to make that argument if you have no evidence behind it. But when you get thousands of people emailing supermarkets and putting their voice to a campaign, then it helps the industry and it helps the sector. And I think that Scotland is actually really remarkably aware. Many Scots are very conscious of where their food comes from, and actually of the politics now that's underpinning the economic hit that many of our producers are going to face.
Yes, of course, with Brexit. And then also, as you were saying there, with the UK government in this trade deal where there wasn't the protections. And of course, I presume that this is a power that the Scottish government don't currently have to keep Scotland the brand themselves, because these are reserved to Westminster. Is that correct?
Well, it's very interesting. There's a bit of dancing between raindrops. So So food labelling is reserved to Westminster, but I've just actually been watching evidence given to the Scottish Select Committee, and if you hang on one second, just to cut for a second, I will find the exact quote, because my eyes lit up at this. So food labelling is reserved to Westminster. So the labelling on the packages of the produce that we get, whether our strawberries are called Scottish or Great British strawberries, that's down to Westminster. However, I've just been listening to evidence given by James Withers, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Scotland Food and Drink, and he was giving evidence to the Scottish Select Committee, and I didn't know this, and he was saying that the reality is, other than trade negotiations, the development of brand and export opportunities are devolved. So it shows that we have got the potential to develop and market Scotland's brand, and that is what the industry wants. There's reams of evidence and market research to show that whether you're talking about it Scotland or in England or across the world, Scotland's name is good for business. Local provenance is good for global sales. And whether you're looking at New Zealand or Canada, those domestic markets work really hard to build their own brand. The New Zealanders have got really exciting stuff happening with their brand development. And Scotland's way up there with our recognizable brand. So there's a huge drive within Scotland. We know how much our brand is worth.
Yes.
One in six Scots are employed in a food and drink sector, but it's not just about food and drink. You're talking about Scotland's international reputation. You're talking about Scotland's international reputation in veterinary skills, in engineering, in so many ways. Our reputation is really up there. We're a nation that punches high, so we have a lot to sell and market, not only within our own communities, but to export as well. And it's really crucial. And I'm really heartened by the amount of people who do get in touch with the campaign. And like I say, I mean, I do it from my kitchen table. So There's a, if I'm ever late answering to a tweet or a tweet message or an email, I apologize, but it's one of those things that is a labor of love, just because I think it really matters. And once we've lost it, it's gone.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And
yes.
I refuse to watch something which is so valuable. I refuse to watch it go without a fight.
Yes. And do you get a lot of support from the corporate side? And is there much lobbying goes on in the Scottish government on this issue? Do you know?
I am very aware that there are some extremely significant figures in business who are quietly supportive of the campaign behind the scenes, because I can say things that they can't. You know,
of course.
While I am guided by professionalism sort of gleaned from years of journalism and PR, I am not restrained in the way in which people who have to actually officially deal with such matters are. So,
of course.
Sorry, we scratch here. So every now and then, the ability just to say what I think and say it sweetly with charm and direction is useful, I think, to some within the industry.
Okay, fantastic. So after all of this work you've already done, and I presume I would know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What are the main priorities for the Keep Scotland the Brand campaign over the next 1 to 2 years?
To be honest, what I would really like to see would be for me not to be needing to do this. Like I say, I mean, I do this on a voluntary basis, and I would really like for it not to be necessary for me to do this. I would like for the battle to be won. I would like the battle to be won so that, of course, Scotland's brand is respected. Of course, Scotland's brand can be developed and shared and enhanced. And of course, we can go on with the business of people on their day-to-day business, going to the shops and looking for Scottish milk and finding it easily, looking for own brand Scottish butter. What happened to that? You know, that was on the shelves a year and a half ago, and it just disappeared within a week. And I saw it happen. I had a conversation about this with the manager in my local shop.
And what was the response?
Oh, they were horrified. I said, where's the butter gone? I went, oh, where has it gone? Well, we'll need to have a look at that. Now, I know that senior management in many supermarkets are restrained with what they can, constrained by what they can say.
Of course, yes.
But I have communications from fairly senior figures within some supermarket chains telling me that they are lobbying behind the scenes for Scotland's brand to be prominent. One supermarket manager told me, he said, one supermarket manager said to me that he knew that he could sell 3 times the amount of produce if it was labelled Scottish and not Great British. He said,
wow.
And he said, I know that my managers know this because I keep telling them. So for the supermarket managers at a senior level to be removing Scottish produce from the shelves is not one which has been done for economic reasons.
Not at all, not at all. And do you think that possibly if there, or do you know if there has been any research into whether more independent retailers in these areas would actually help with the brand or not?
The research that I have seen indicates that independent retailers tend to sell Scottish produce in Scotland because it sells so much better. I was speaking to the manager who is the buyer for fresh fruit and vegetables, or he was at that point, for one supermarket chain. And he said, this is madness. I don't even put soft fruit on the shelves until the Scottish soft fruit season starts. So
yes,
they I mean, that's it. And actually in England, people, the market research done, repeatedly market research done, shows that people will actively choose to buy Scottish produce if they see it on the shelves because they, quite rightly, in many cases, recognise that it is a product which is coming from a cleaner environment and will have a good flavour and quality they can trust.
So in that respect, in terms of the campaign for independence for Scotland itself, do you see that independence would be necessary in order to keep Scotland the brand in the longer term?
Well, the Keep Scotland the Brand campaign is strictly politically neutral. I mean, that is something which is right across, right from the get-go.
Okay.
I made right from the get-go, I made really clear that Keep Scotland the Brand takes no political stance and it is a politically neutral campaign. However, as is often the case with most people, my personal politics are actually a matter of record and Hansard, because in order to be completely transparent, I've made clear both on the website and elsewhere that Keep Scotland the Brand grew out of a conversation that we had between Yes Kirriemuir and Yes Forfar. We were just kind of spraffing and talking about this. I was having one of my usual rants about how worried I was about
Yes.
Scottish agriculture and our rural communities, and we got talking and so I came up with the idea. But there have actually been groups across Scotland, including one not far from yours, Peterhead, ScotRef Peterhead.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. I know the guys up there. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have been instrumental. There were 5 or 6 groups, because I thought, okay, if I'm getting this idea together, then because I worked in broadcasting, I know that a good idea works better when it's part of a team.
Of course. Yes.
And actually, it just so I was really careful to discuss the concept of the campaign with a number of groups across Scotland, and the leaflet was actually the idea of the people up in Peterhead. But again, we were really careful to write it in such a way that it was neutral. However, I am not neutral, and I've gone from no to yes. Back in 2014, if you had asked me, even in July, what I thought, in fact, I know for a fact what I said, because we were over on holiday in Scotland. At the time I lived in Australia, and we were back, we were overseeing the family, and everyone was talking about the campaign. And I really favoured Devo Max, and I couldn't vote because I was in Australia, and I still wasn't convinced about independence. But one of my former colleagues, in fact, one of my former mentors who helped train me as a journalist, she's just started sending me a load of sourced material, because I was missing. In Australia, we got a really sanitized version of the campaign, and she started sending me more information.
Yes.
And by the end of it, I was by the time I went from no to yes about a week before the campaign, before the referendum in 2014. And the biggest thing I was worried about was Europe, because primarily I'm not a nationalist, I'm an internationalist. I believe in self-determination. And I was concerned that Scotland would fare worse being outside the European Union. But in the end, actually, I thought, you know what, it'll be okay, because although I think that a belligerent England would have done everything it could to block us from re-entering the EU, I think eventually we would have done. However, Brexit now means that we can't. We have to make a choice. You know,
of course, yes, yes.
The status quo is no longer there, and in many respects, I think that actually might mean that Scotland gets a better version of independence.
Yes.
In many respects, I think that Scotland will get a better version of independence and a faster re-accession into the EU because of the way in which England is behaving. So I think that and this is completely separate from the Keep Scotland the Brand campaign, because I do genuinely run that on a neutral basis. And that's the reason why the campaign, that you'll see if you go to the Twitter page, I don't follow anybody to stay, just to keep neutral. I'm really careful about what I share, and I keep it professional. But personally, I think that it has become a matter of life and death for Scotland, literally, to become independent. I think that if we are left on this bitter little rock that has become Brexit land, and if we are led by the charlatans and shysters that would inflict continued harm upon people and lies and deception, and even at this time of coronavirus, where really party politics should be put to one side, and we are seeing deaths beyond the number of deaths that people would have thought possible or tolerated or tolerable in any way, and the lies and deceptions that we are seeing. And for this to happen with us going into a hard Brexit, as is looking more and more likely, to be where we will be like lambs splayed across some deeply ghastly altar of neoliberalism and neo-capitalism gone mad. So I think genuinely that if we want to maintain a rural economy, if we want to maintain the quality of food on our tables, if we want to do anything close to ending food poverty, the horror of food poverty in a country as wealthy as ours, then we have to have independence. And that's got nothing to do with the Keep Scotland the Brand campaign, but it is everything to do with many of my waking minutes. And for the future I want to leave my children, then if we don't have independence now, I fully see that we could end up with the Scottish Parliament being dissolved, and
Yes,
everything that Boris Johnson does leads me to see the way that he dissolved Parliament illegally. Everything he does is anti-democratic. There's very little. I mean, I try not to hyperbolize, because as soon as you start going into absolutes, oh, everything Boris Johnson does is wrong, people will go, but you know, he likes puppies. I don't know, you know what I mean? But
yes.
The evidence I have seen before me is that Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings, I don't know what Dominic Cummings has on him, but my goodness, there must be a really grisly, dirty video of him somewhere, that Dominic Cummings is just, there's a cabal of anti-democratic, deeply worrying cronyism and corruption, which is evidenced.
Yes, yes.
And there's an evidence trail for it, and it's there. Why aren't they releasing the Russia report? I mean, it's so easy to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the reality is that we are living through the kind of times that I asked my parents about, and you know, my parents both lived through the 1930s. My father was an Edwardian, he was born in 1920s. They fought in the war. My mum was a youngster and lived through it. And I asked my dad tells me a story, or used to tell me, he's dead now, but my dad used to tell me a story of going hitchhiking in Norway in 1938. And he and the rest of Europe was on one side of the youth hostel, and the black shirts were on the other side. The Hitler Youth were on the other side. And they spent the whole time singing The Umbrella Man, which was basically about appeasement. And a year later, the 18-year-old that was my dad was fighting in a war. And I said to him, how come decent people didn't do anything before it came to war? And he said it was like people were sleepwalking into it. And I promised myself then that if ever I was in a situation where, you know, when you're a kid, you're going to go, well, what would I have done? Well, this is it, people.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
the time.
Yes.
This is what you would have
Absolutely.
done. It's what you are doing now. And if you are not part of a movement to try and bring us towards democracy and justice and dignity and human rights, then you are part of the problem. So, for me, independence can't come soon enough.
Yes, I'd have to say I 100% agree with you there, Ruth, and it's fantastic to see your passion in that respect. Also, I know totally separate to the brand. It's the same for me. I work around food banks and advice centres in the third sector here, and also in a rural area of Scotland. So I see the effects of policy and bad policy every single day, and I'm exactly the same as you now, and this is why I'm now getting involved essentially and doing these rallies and standing up and being heard, because enough is enough. And I 100% agree. I think one of the things I would totally agree with you on there is, you know, the answer to that question of your father's was because people were sleepwalking into it, you know, and this is the scary thing. I do foresee that people are sleepwalking right into it again. And if we don't stand up and we don't tell them and we don't say what we think, then we'll just get dragged along with them, unfortunately. you've got to fight, don't you? It's the most important thing we can do. Thank you so much for that. That was really interesting. I've learned quite a lot about Keep Scotland brand myself as well. So thanks for coming on and sharing that with us. And if anything, I hope that that will encourage more people to speak up, and certainly for more people to protect the brand.
Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And you. Bye.
Bye. I'm joined now by David Younger, a fellow Assembly member and volunteer of the Digital Covenant Core team, the same as myself. David has carried out a lot of research on the pros and cons of introducing universal basic income, with regular mention of this in recent months from MSPs and MPs. He's here to tell us a little bit more about it. Hi, David.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And yourself?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Shall we plow on?
Yeah, so David, can you tell us what your research has shown as being the most important things to consider when countries look to implement a system of universal basic income, and why?
Well, when you ask me that question, the most important thing to bear in mind, to take into consideration, is the constitutional side of it, rather than the practicality. The practicality is such that if we adopt universal basic income, we have to decide amongst ourselves what the best form of UBI actually is. And there are, well, there are several, but there are two major elements that we can consider here. One is from the Finnish model, which I think a lot of people already know about. If they don't know the exact basics of it, they have heard of it, let's say. But the other is a model that was instituted in Canada, in Ontario, in 2017, which is also extremely interesting. So first of all, if I can just quickly go through the basics. The Finnish model involved 2,000 respondents. The idea, it was operated by a group called Kela, who is actually the Finnish Social Security Agency. Their original project involved 10,000 people. It was cut short by a government decision. The 2,000 that they did work with were all unemployed. By contrast, the Canadian model involved 4,000 people, and they were simply in the lowest income category, regardless of whether they were employed or not. The Finnish model, the idea was it was very much in the end politics driven. They wanted to see, the government that is, wanted to see that there was an improvement in employment prospects. And the result was a little disappointing, I think, for them. There was an improvement, but it was less than 1 hour per month per respondent. In the Canadian model, they were simply looking for an improvement in well-being, in more, shall we say, more ability of the group to improve their employment prospects, to improve their general well-being. And also the main difference here was that the Finnish model involved a payment of around 600 euros, which is about £500 at that time. The Canadian model was rather more generous. It was between $13,000 and $18,000 per year. The Finnish model, the figures I've given, by the way, are monthly rather than annually. And the Canadian model had some interesting results. Both of these schemes were effectively ended by party political aspirations or party political decisions, shall we say, on the part of both governments. So the one thing I would say here is, before we even talk about what form of UBI, we have to decide that that form is constitutionally guaranteed. Which brings me to the Assembly here, because the Assembly can decide how a UBI scheme goes forward, and how it is protected from party political interference, so that we don't go from, say, one left-wing administration that's all in favour of it to one right-wing administration that just wants to cancel it, which is exactly what happened in Ontario.
Yes, and in that case then, David, did that result in sort of a reversal of the positive effects that it had when it was cancelled, or do they not have that sort of data yet?
I don't have access to that data, because in both cases, Helsinki University and Toronto University simply wanted to find out what the effects of the UBI scheme were going forward as a scheme. As soon as it stopped, they were less interested in the negative results, shall we say, of withdrawing the scheme. They were interested in finding out how it affected people's well-being, and the principal effect was not economic, but it was social health, mental health, and the ability of people to control their own lives. That was a huge response, particularly in Finland, where people felt that their lives were back under control. They were in control of their lives, as opposed to outside influences.
Okay, so obviously you are a member of the Assembly and you've signed the covenant. So is this something that you see being taken forward in that way? Because from what you've described, it sounds like it could be a great solution for Scotland, especially in this period of economic uncertainty we're going to have and recovery post-COVID. But how would you see Scotland implementing such a system like UBI? And would it be implemented, should it be, I suppose, implemented in line with a whole host of solutions through that Assembly? Because by the sounds of things, there would need to be quite a lot of public consultation on how such a system would work.
Yes, there would. There are several separate issues in that particular question you asked. One of which is that the ability of the system to create universal basic income has to be on the basis that the name universal has to come forward. The big problem that I have had with all of the schemes that I've looked at, except one, but that is a different issue. But the basic problem with all of these schemes is that they are, in inverted commas, trials. Now, if you have a trial system where you say, well, let's take a couple of thousand people out of this community and we give them money and see how they get on, that's not universal basic income. That's selective basic income.
Yes.
And the big problem with that is that politically, there's a terrific tendency then to start going on means testing. So effectively, the people who get UBI, they get it because they are most in need. And the result is you will get resentment from the rest of the community. You will get people saying, why should they get it? They're work shy. They can't make a living for themselves. They should, do whatever it is that, they have to do to make a living for themselves.
In a way that I suppose the benefit system currently can be stigmatized in that way.
It is indeed. It never used to be, but it is now, and it's a very serious issue. And I don't think, I mean, if you're going to have universal basic income, it has to be universal.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Otherwise, you don't call it UBI, you call it something else.
Yes.
Now, in the Canadian model in particular, all right, they only took 4,000 respondents. That was a trial system. Now, first of all, I would say that if we are going to do it in Scotland, there is enough empirical evidence not to worry about trialing, because effectively the information is there. You're not going to get any more information by trialing a new system.
Okay.
So what we have to, there is one way of doing it without rolling it out across the entire nation, and that is just to take a separate community, one which is largely self-contained or as much as possible, and give everyone in that community UBI and see what happens. That's the only way that I can think of that we could actually determine what the true results are across the community, because in the end it's the community that benefits from it, not the individual. Okay. And I think everybody misses that point. They think in terms of, Mr. B needs more money, so we give him more money. But that's not what it's all about. It's really about what happens when you put a certain amount of money into the community, and you can do it through individuals, or you can do it in a block grant as they did in Kenya. But the Kenyan model was very much affected by social and geographical conditions in Kenya. And even the people who ran that project admitted that it wouldn't work in large urban areas. It was only for small rural areas. Okay. In my view, I would like to see UBI rolled out, but I think that any Scottish government that rolls it out is going to have to accept that there is a huge nationwide cost, and they're going to have to determine how that cost is met.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. On the side, there were the positive aspects on the Canadian model. One of the most interesting was the response of two of the recipients of UBI, who both at that time had purely coincidentally happened to start their own businesses. And being in receipt of UBI, they made it absolutely clear that that money actually helped them through the startup phase and helped their businesses to grow and become self-sufficient. They both said that they would never have survived the first year of business whilst trying to keep a roof over their heads and look after their family. So there is definitely the prospect of an economic benefit from UBI, but we can't be prescriptive. We can't say, oh, you're starting a business so you can have some money. It doesn't work like that. Yes. I mean, you could come up with a system that says that, well, somebody starting their own business can have a government grant, but that's not UBI. It's just something completely different.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah, but in terms of UBI itself, I need to go on to say at this point that I personally regard UBI as a stepping stone. It's not the ultimate answer. It's one of the steps that we have to take on the way forward to designing a new kind of economy for the whole world, not just Scotland, but everybody has to take this on board. We are looking at the end of what we like to call the neoliberal and please don't argue with me, because there is no definition of neoliberal, but what we all recognize under the term neoliberal
Yes.
or a capitalist type economy.
Yes.
And it brings into play another issue, which is something that I have found, and I've found it very difficult to write a brief article about this, because UBI is inexorably bound up with jobs, with work, with how we define work, how we value it, which is
Yes,
the
of
most
course,
important
yes.
thing. Because recipients of UBI would have the ability to design their own workplace. They would have the ability to determine what they wanted to do with their time. And at the moment, what we have is a system which says you have to work, therefore, here's a job, or there's a job over there, or go and find a job, and whatever it is, you work at it because you need the money.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have something like in the USA, something like 60% of people actively hate their jobs, and I'm pretty certain it's fairly close to that in the UK. People
I'm
do
sure,
jobs.
yes.
Yeah, people do jobs because they want money, because they have to have money to live.
Yes.
And what we're looking at here is designing a system where people can choose what they do, and ultimately it's not going to be any less economically productive. I mean, we have to get over this idea of productivity, because in reality, most occupations that we follow, whether they're paid or not, are productive to the local economy, but they're not productive in the international economic sense. The only productive jobs there are jobs in manufacturing, where the manufacturer exports the end product.
Yes, there's a physical, tangible outcome.
Yes, exactly. That's the only way that they can determine how much a job is worth. So if you work in a factory and you happen to produce £200,000 worth of product in a year, then after your wages and costs are taken off it, that is your productivity.
Yes,
But
of course, yes.
But if you're looking after a loved one who needs 24-hour care, your productivity is zero. You know, you don't even have a job. You've given up a job to do this job.
Yes. However, you're one of the most
recognize
valuable people, aren't you? So
yeah, we don't recognize it. And what about one partner in a two-partner marriage who decides it's actually better for the partnership and for the children and for all sorts of other reasons to stay at home and be there when the kids come home from school and cook meals for them and spend time with them? The benefits of that could be absolutely massive, but
yes.
that person has become unemployed and therefore is a burden on the state. It doesn't work, and we have to find a new way of allowing people to assess how they spend their time. And one way of doing it is UBI, because in that event, we don't judge them. We don't say, oh, well, you're in a low income occupation, yes, or you're not in an occupation at all. We don't judge them. We're giving them the money, and in receipt of that money, they can do as they think it is best for their personal input and the society that they live in.
Yes.
And if you want to be a writer and you want to write a book, then why not? It might be that only about 10 people in the world want to read your book, and 9 of them think it's rubbish anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't
yes.
matter, because it's given you value, and it's added to the sum total of human society. You want to be a musician. There are probably thousands of musicians out there who never got a recording contract, and probably quite a few of them are actually very talented.
Yes.
So why shouldn't you be a musician? Why shouldn't you try to peddle your music? You can do it online, it's easy enough. But whether you make any money out of it, that's another issue. You
Yeah.
want to paint, why not?
Yes.
You know, there's masses of things that you could be doing. There's favors that you could be doing your neighbors. There's things that you could be doing to help the local community, but you don't have time for it because you're working 9 to 5, 6 days a week, plus overtime, just to keep a roof over your head. What's wrong with having the time to help out elderly neighbours? What's the problem with having time to add to your local community? And this brings me back to what I was saying earlier about UBI. It has to be assessed on a community basis, and that in all of the projects that I've looked at, that has never been done. Every time such a project has been brought into effect, it's been for a selected group, and it was always the unemployed or the low income. But what about everyone? You know, why don't we just look at how much money can come through UBI and effectively help the people within a community, all of the people within a community, to design and operate activities within that community which actually help everyone. And I think it would work. But
and on that basis, on that basis, it kind of feeds into the wider social and economic benefits of having such a system. It's not just about, you know, where the money comes from for people, but it's about what it allows people to do to build and integrate within their communities.
Well, there's a much larger argument here about what money is, and I don't want
of course,
for the sake of this interview. But effectively, what we're doing is placing money in the part of the community where it will be spent. And at the moment, the system is placing money in the part of the community where it is not being spent. It's being converted into assets.
Yes.
Now, I'll go on, at this point, I would say that there was a big difference between the Finnish and the Ontario model in terms of income. And that is a dividing line. The Finnish model was fairly modest in what people got. Now, I'm not saying that that was wrong. I'm just saying that if we were to go down that route in Scotland in designing a low income UBI, we have to be sure that certain aspects of society generally are protected. In particular, if you have a low income, then it has to be in addition to any existing benefits that are you're entitled to. If we just say it's an alternative to the universal benefit system, nobody benefits from that except a few administrators, a few politicians. It doesn't work. So it has. If it's a low income, it has to be in addition to what's already existing in terms of benefits. If it's a higher income, for example, the alternative would be to say half of the median income. So at the moment, that works out at around £13,500.
Yeah. Okay.
Then it can displace certain benefits. So housing benefit, for example, unemployment benefit. It won't displace others. For example, the niche benefits if you're looking after a disabled relative, or you know.
Yes.
Those sort of issues, they will still be in addition. There will be additional payments, but basically, you're getting that income as a partial replacement of the benefits that you would be getting, and it's quite important to make that distinction quite clear, because the money has to come from somewhere, and I'll go into that in a minute.
Yes.
But ultimately, we have to have protection, and I go back to the People's Assembly here. We have to determine what those protections are. For example, if we have minimum wage, then that minimum wage has to be policed and it has to be maintained.
Yes.
Because the one thing that can't be allowed to happen is that employers cash in on UBI and start paying people £2 an hour. That will not happen. It should be prevented from happening under any circumstances. So the minimum
Yes.
wage has to be protected and maintained. And certain other issues such as local taxation and whatnot.
Okay.
But it's really for the People's Assembly to determine. And I'm very much in favour of the People's Assembly doing it rather than it being handed down from the administration, either in the UK or in Scotland for that matter. It doesn't make any difference. I don't want it handed down top down, because then it is under political control. And
Yes.
from what I've seen of all of the attempts made so far to introduce UBI, including the latest one in Spain, by the way, they're under political control, and politicians can take away what they give.
Yes.
And it's a very unstable system. How can you say I'm on UBI and I feel secure if next year some right-wing politician is going to be elected instead of the one who gave you the UBI in the first place, and then he's just going to say, oh, that's a hell of a lot of money, we're just going to take it away, so you're not going to get your UBI after next month or whatever. And that's that's what's been happening. So in reality, I really despair of the idea of having yet another experimental system, yet another test of UBI. We've been down that road. We know from the limited amount of information that you can get out of the limited projects that have been put forward in the UBI. We know what the results are. The results are better mental health, better physical health, more feeling amongst the recipients that they have control over their own lives. But we don't know what the effect on the community is. We don't know what the long-term effects are, because even the Finnish model only lasted 2 years before somebody pulled the plug. And this is something that has to go for 5 or 10 years even before we can really determine how the ultimate results are going to be, how good they are going to be, how ordinary people are going to be able to really benefit from it, and how society and communities in general are going to benefit from it. And it may require tweaking, but I personally don't think we'll get a negative result out of it. I just think we'll get some unexpected results.
Well, particularly, I think if we are looking, and as we're discussing here, and we see this as something that should be driven by the people. So rather than being top down, the policy is driven from the bottom up through the communities. They drive that policy and they tell or instruct the government how they think it should work, so that it's designed in a way that benefits them the most. Often when policy is designed by government, there's not enough consultation or enough understanding of people's circumstances on the ground in the first place for these policies to be effective. I know from my own work experience, I work around advice centres and food banks and things, and I have watched the rollout of universal credit. And I work with advisors who, recognise right from the get-go that system was fundamentally flawed. And it was flawed because it was developed by the civil service and politicians, and it wasn't developed by the people. And I think that's the biggest thing for Scotland going forward, is that if we want to be this independent country and we do want to rebuild, then we need to do that together as a people, and not as a narrative that's been led by the politicians telling us what we want. We need to tell them what we want instead. So we need to flip that system ever so slightly, maybe.
And there's much wider issues which we can't really discuss here tonight, because they're I don't know how long you want to make this video, but I don't think 3 hours is a good idea.
No.
But there are much wider issues on as I said earlier, on how we judge the economy, what the economy actually is. Because we have politicians who go for economic growth. It's always growth. But they don't understand what that growth is, and they don't understand how to achieve it. Now, when they talk about economic growth, nearly all the economic growth that the UK has had over the last 20 years has been in economic activity.
Yes.
It's a different thing entirely from economic productivity. And I'll bet you, if you got any politician, any government member on television and asked them a direct question about productivity, they would get pretty upset. They would actually want to walk away from it, because they know perfectly well that productivity doesn't actually mean a great deal.
Yes.
You know, what you do in a community and what I do in a community, actually, in economic terms, really only has a benefit on us.
Yes.
In fact, it doesn't even have an economic benefit. I might come and paint your house for you because you don't know how to do it, and I do. I might fix a leaking pipe in your sink. You know, I might come and fix your electrics because I know how to do it and you don't. You might come and help me sort out things that I don't know about.
Yes.
Now, well, that goes back, in fact, to David Graeber's description of the debt by obligation. So effectively, you feel obliged as a member of the community to help other members of the community. So I may do you a favor. You don't necessarily do me a favor in return, but you might do a favor for the person around the corner or up the road. It doesn't matter. The fact is that because I've done you a favor, you feel obliged to return that favor in any way possible. So if it happens to be helping an old person get their shopping in or sort their garden out, you'll do that for them, and so on and so forth, because it carries on. As
Yes,
you do
of course.
favors for other people, they do favors for other people. And governments hate this because you can't tax those things. You know, you can't say, oh, well, that was worth 20,000 a year, so we're going to charge you £5,000 tax or whatever. They can't do it because no money passed hands.
Yes.
Sometimes money does pass hands, but we'll gloss over that one. But the reality of it is that a lot of our economic activity can't be judged by conventional means of productivity. It has to be judged by what we do for each other, how our lives are improved as a result of that being done. And if you're in receipt of UBI, and this is one of the reasons why I say UBI is a stepping stone rather than the ultimate result. But if you're in receipt of UBI, then you have the security of an income.
Yeah.
It allows you to do the other things that the current economic system insists that you do, like paying your electricity bill and paying your rent or mortgage or what it, you know. So you can do those things, but at the same time, you don't have to do the other things that involve getting the money in the first place, which means that you can start doing things that actually benefit the community, that benefit your neighbors, your friends, your family. So it becomes a more fluid system, and one that is less identifiable to central government. So the People's Assembly, in this sense, really has to make that kind of decision, because no government will. They won't understand it. They won't relate to it. They'll actually find it threatening, because it reduces their income, it reduces their control over how you conduct your life. And so many things are just out of their control. I suspect they probably hate the idea. They want to give you universal basic income, perhaps, but they want to do it on their terms.
Yes, yes,
Their terms are not necessarily the terms that we have to be looking at.
yes.
But when we get on to the point, one way or another, it has to be paid for.
Of course, absolutely.
And there are taxation issues, and again, one of the big lies that's been told to us over the years by conservatives, mostly conservatives, although in the last 20 years the Labour Party have got into this as well, is the idea of if taxes have to go up,
Yes,
it's your taxes. It's not companies' taxes. It's not duties. It's not anything that doesn't directly affect you. When they talk about tax, it's your tax.
yes,
So obviously people will vote for lower taxes because they don't want to pay so much. But they don't realize that the lower taxes they generally get are the lower taxes on big business, the lower taxes on wealthy individuals, on inheritance, land value tax, any of these things. They're not even in the frame for discussion.
yes,
And the problem is that income tax at the moment is responsible for about 29% of all taxation. And okay, you stick a penny on income tax, you make another 50 or 60 billion, but it doesn't even begin to cover what we need to do in the way of universal income. So I'm a great believer in land value tax. I'm a great believer in wealth taxation. And that's a whole different issue, one that has to be designed very, very carefully indeed. We can do it. You know, companies, I could show you graphs which show that companies have consistently, since 1973, they've shed their workforce and increased their profits.
yes, yes.
And that basically is because they're making use of better technology.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with it, except that no administration in the world seems to have been prepared for it. So effectively, instead of saying, well, hang on a minute, you can go on making these profits, but we're going to take a bigger slice of those profits because it still leaves you with more than you started off with.
Yes.
And we're going to use that slice to pour back into the general economy and help our own people. If governments had thought about this and really planned it out a long, long time ago, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion, because
yes, of course,
right from the outset, money would be poured back in at the bottom of the economic scale into the pockets of the very people who need that money, who will spend that money, and actually help the corporations who are paying the tax in the first place.
Yes.
As things have reached the situation now where the consumer society can't continue.
Yeah, I would agree with that, David. I see that as well.
Yeah, we're losing a huge percentage of populations across the world who simply aren't earning enough money to have a good disposable income, which means they can't buy the products that the big corporations are manufacturing. And as it goes on, we're reaching the stage also, in fact, we reached the stage back in about 2010, where people can't afford to buy homes. And the percentage fell from 69, I think it's now around 54%. And with the upcoming generation of potential homeowners, it's going to fall still further. So we might get back to where we were 100 years ago, where 20% of the population were owner-occupiers. And there we have another problem, because the whole rental market is privately owned. Governments have made sure of that. So we do have to reset the system.
Yes.
And the more I think about it, the more I go into this, the more I realize it has to come through the voice of the people rather than the voice of governments, because governments are always. I don't want to be overly critical of Nicola Sturgeon because you'll get all sorts of nasty comments, but I would say they were given an open door for land value tax, and they ran a mile. They turned around and they just ran away from it.
Yes.
And perhaps even more worrying, that they were given legislation for rent controls, for proper rent controls. They ran away from that as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I don't like where this is going. It's got nothing to do with whether I want an independent Scotland or not. But if we get an independent Scotland and we've got a government that is just as bad as the one in England, we haven't really gotten that far forward. And really, the People's Assembly is the structure that will make that happen. They will decide how we want our new country to be. They'll decide they'll decide everything. Yeah, environmental issues, economic issues. They'll make huge decisions which we can then hold our government to account on, whoever happens to be in government in an independent Scotland. But I do believe, particularly with UBI, that we have to take the political element out of it. We can't allow a government to bring in UBI and then decide 18 months down the line, oh, it's too expensive, it's too troublesome, we're not going to have it. If we're going to do UBI, we do it, and that's it.
Yes.
If we're not going to do UBI, then be honest and say so. We're not going to do UBI because we want the big corporations to continue making their profits. There are so many lies told about general economic conditions. You know, the idea that if you reduce corporation tax, people will pour money into the country, and if you increase corporation tax, they won't.
Yes.
I mean, that is, quite frankly, that is bollocks.
Yes, there's no evidence to suggest that's the case as well. I've looked at that many a time.
Actually, there's evidence to suggest exactly the opposite.
The opposite, yeah.
And there are ways of extracting corporation tax. There are methods that we can bring into place that will allow us to apply corporation tax to international corporations. There are methods which will allow us to stop wealthy people hiding their wealth in tax havens. We've got all those levers, but for some reason over the years, all our politicians have become terribly frightened to even think about using them, let alone making them work. So the money is there for UBI if we want to do UBI.
Yes, it just needs prioritised.
Yeah, and why should we want to do it? Because it's the most effective way of putting the money from where it is just now into the place where it needs to be, and creating a more equal society. And every research carried out in any part of the world shows that the best societies are the more equal ones. And we have to move to equality. But I did say earlier that I've said twice, in fact, and now I'm saying for the third time, UBI I still regard as only a stepping stone.
Yes.
There is a place we can go beyond that. I don't want to discuss it here because it is so complicated, and besides anything, besides that, I haven't even worked out in my own mind exactly how it works, but I have got an idea that we provide people with the basics of life. So you could be on a salary of 100,000 a year, but I would say to you that this country owes you the equivalent of, say, 20,000 in terms of keeping a roof over your head. If you want to add to that, fine, no problem at all. But you can't go below that. So if you lose your job, your 100,000 disappears, and the next day you wake up and you find you're down to your last few bob, you've still got a roof over your head.
Yes.
You're not going to lose that.
Yes.
It might not be the one that you paid for when you were on your 100,000, but at least it's not out on the street.
Yes.
And other issues like power, heat and light, your basic food needs.
Yeah.
All of these should be covered out with the general economic system, and then you can work, you can do whatever job you like, and you can be an entrepreneur, you can be the greatest capitalist in the world. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you have the protection of what happens if everything goes wrong. And how much more confident would you be to go and take a punt on an idea if you thought, if it goes tits up on me, I've still got a roof over my head. I can still heat the house. I can still switch the lights on, and I can still cook food for my kids.
Yeah.
You're much more likely to want to take a chance. And if one chance in 100 works out, then the country benefits.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it leads to a more fulfilled and happy society at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Of course it does, because you've got the control over what you do with your life. You can decide how your life goes.
Yeah.
So
on that,
so go on.
Sorry, on that note, David, I was going to say, I think we're just running out of time. But certainly from here, I can see material for shows in the future. So you never know, it might become a bit more of a regular thing that we catch up and chat about these things. But certainly the information you've given today, I would hope, would encourage people to look at UBI in a bit more detail, certainly to realise it needs more consideration, and potentially to, sign up to the Covenant and join that conversation in the Assembly.
Sign up to the Covenant, and I would also say, please be, please feel free to contact me, ask me questions. I can give you information, I can give you basic background that may help those who are really interested in following this through. I can give you basic information which may well help you make better decisions than I'm coming up with. I mean, I'm just coming up with ideas. If somebody out there gets hold of the information and analyzes it and takes it on board, they could well come up with something that I'd never even thought of. And that's what it's all about as well. The People's Assembly is everybody, and there are people out there who probably don't even know that they're smart enough, they're bright enough, and they've got ideas enough, creative enough to come up with new solutions. So don't listen to me and think that I am telling you that I know better than politicians. I probably do, but then you probably know better than me. This isn't a competition. It's about thinking this through. I've given you my ideas tonight, and yes, I'd love to talk, particularly about jobs. I'd love to talk about jobs. We do that in another interview.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Great to chat to you. See you later.
Not at all. That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Hi there folks, the team who are working with site admin for Scotland's National Covenant have asked me to deliver this, just a few minutes footage explaining the connection between Yes Day Scotland and the 500 miles walk, and what is now in position as the Independence Covenant. My name is Nicholas Russell. I started the Yes Day Scotland media portal back in late summer 2015. Setting aside the result of the 2014 referendum completely, I was more focused on how the result was actually achieved. Specifically, we are citizens using centuries old methodology, and yeah, the issuing of a 650 page white paper book, which most people had never even heard of, let alone read. So the Twitter feed was basically started to say there must be a better way that we can use technology to interface with democracy. I mean, I can go and ride my bicycle in 2015 and I can tell you within a square metre today where I was back then. So on that basis, there are surely better systems that can be used. So that's what started off as a community discussion with Yes Day Scotland that very quickly began to gain traction, and by the time that we got to January 2016, the aspect of distributed ledger technology, aka blockchain, had entered the equation, and that's when it really began to accelerate. And yeah, it was a very interesting conversation, and at its peak the Twitter portal was gaining 2 million hits a month, and I just kept on going and going. I'm just an ordinary citizen. I am not a politician. I'm voluntary for Scotland. I enjoy the subject matter, and I enjoy thinking about Scotland's future and what it could do to improve life for fellow citizens. Back to the actual voting mechanisms of 2014, as we know, heading 30% of the votes were postal votes. So there were many discrepancies in that system, and UK Tories were able to talk openly on the night of the results, before the results were even issued, about what the postal votes were saying. So again, these systems are fundamentally wrong in the modern 21st century. So I became, by circumstance, Scotland's features writer on the subject of blockchain democracy. And I started first of all with the main Business for Scotland website. Fascinating project. The first article delivered for them, there was a team of 6 of us working on one article for 6 weeks. We knew we had to get that article right, and when it published, it went global viral. Groundbreaking, pioneering, full of aspiration and hope for the future. So that first article was a general article. I then went on to work with the Blockchain Technology Laboratory within Edinburgh University and delivered the academic bridge of understanding between what the professors are working with and what the general public can understand of what the future might be. And then we went on to deliver the first ever article on the subject in conjunction with one of Scotland's politicians, who was Martin Docherty Hughes, who subsequently then went on to become Scotland's blockchain leader in Westminster. So summer 2018, I was contacted by Dave Llewellyn, who is a very well-known independence supporter for Scotland, and he just said to me, there's a bunch of us who are full of admiration for the subject matter that you write about, and we're so enthused about it that we'd like to go out and actually walk 500 miles across Scotland telling people about what you're talking about and what this can do for the future. To which I said, well, that's great, I'm coming with you. And that's how it started off. A bunch of us went out and we started in Isle of Skye. Ian Blackford, Scotland's Westminster leader, very kindly opened the 500 miles walk, and over the next 3 weeks we walked 500 miles together, and every single community we talked to across Scotland told us that if they were enabled with the capability to use blockchain democracy to help determine Scotland's future, that they would never stop in the drive to do that. So that's why we never stopped. And we finished that walk and got to work again. A lot of people, every single person deployed on the project has been working on a voluntary basis. My input specifically has been purely in relation to confirming that the blockchain systems are intact and that the signatures are being recorded as they should be, and they are. So you can see from our website, Yesterday Scotland WordPress, we've accumulated somewhere in the region of 100 articles tracking Scotland's progress over the years. I've delivered 80,000 tweets. I'll keep on going. That is my ultra niche subject matter, blockchain democracy. And every component of the Independence Covenant is absolutely intact where it should be. The data systems are working to flawless. The blockchain systems for recording signatures are certainly flawless. And there's a wonderful prospect ahead if everybody in Scotland can just simply grasp what the capabilities are. So all I can do is wish everyone all the very best for the future. Many thanks, folks. Over and out.
I'm Billy Kay. Being brought up in what was the Covenant and heartland of Ayrshire during the 17th century, signing national covenants for Scotland's weal comes easy to me. It also came easy to 2 million Scots who signed John McCormick's remarkable Scottish Covenant between 1949 and 1952. It was one of the first expressions of modern Scottish nationalism and was described accurately as a remarkable feat of consciousness raising. Now imagine if 2/3 of the electorate today was to sign the Scottish Digital Covenant, demanding our sovereign right to be an independent nation. It is coming yet for all that, but if we all sign the Covenant, it might just come that wee bit sooner.
Welcome back, folks. Hope you're all having a great day today. We're now joined by a familiar face in the Yes movement. I'm sure many of you all know him. It's Mr. Pat Lee. Hi, Pat. How are you?
Hi, Diane. I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for the invite.
No problem at all. We wanted to invite you here today to talk to you about one of the new political parties on the scene for the upcoming 2021 Scottish parliamentary elections. I know that you are part of the Alliance for Independence steering group.
Hashtag match the yes.
Oh yes, definitely not forget your hashtag. We're trying to get that out everywhere just now, aren't we, Pat? So I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the Alliance for Independence and the idea behind it, so that anybody that's joining the rally today can get a background to Alliance for Independence, or AFI as some are calling it. So Pat, with Alliance for Independence and the Independence for Scotland Party going head to head already in the competition to scoop these valuable regional list seats, and the attempt to game the dreaded the haunt system at Holyrood. Why should people throw their support behind the Alliance for Independence group?
Well, first of all, let me put something straight. It's not a competition here. In December last year, the general election result really got to me, and throughout the past couple of years, there's been this concept of putting a list-only party together. Everybody was talking the talk, nobody was walking the walk. So on the 12th, I think it was the 12th, no, it was the 27th of December, I put up a post saying, let's stop talking the talk, let's walk the walk. And I put together what I called at the time the People's Party. Now,
Okay.
that was to put up a single list party to be a voice for the whole of the Yes movement. Now, unknown to us at the time, the ISP had already put their idea in motion, and we're going for electoral commission recognition. Didn't know about it. The difference between us and them is we had an idea and we put it. I put it out there. There was others with the same idea, likes of I for Independence, I Alliance in the Highlands, I Alliance in the Highlands. They contacted me, and we came together, and we've taken it. Our first meeting was in February 2nd to February 4th, and we had a number of Yes groups represented from around the country at that inaugural meeting. And it was decided that we would try to put together a list party. So since that we have, I can't speak about the ISP because we haven't spoke too much. They attended the meeting. They explained that they were in the process of electoral commission recognition to stand in the election.
Okay.
They were a party. They obviously accepted a constitution on behalf of themselves, and
Okay.
we have gone through that process as well. And the Alliance for Independence is now a fully constituted interim constitution. Remember, because we will have a national conference whereby the membership will decide the actual constitution for moving forward, but we are maybe a week or two away from a proper launch.
And for Alliance for Independence, how will you develop your policies? I know you have some aims and you have a principal statement that's up on your Facebook page, and anybody can have a look at that.
I've got it in front of me. If you don't mind, I'll read it out.
Yeah, that's fine.
The purpose of the Alliance for Independence, hashtag Match the Yes, is it's a ground floor grassroots alliance to maximise the number of pro-independence MSPs elected in the Scottish Parliament at Holyrood 2021. The concept was at the time, because we were talking about having the referendum, whether we have our Indie Ref this year or not, we need to ensure that a stonking majority of pro-independence MSPs, representatives of the whole Yes movement, are elected to the Scottish Parliament at next year's Holyrood's election. The idea is we want to ensure, and this is where we don't differ from the ISP because they won't be standing in the constituency either. We want to ensure that SNP stands unopposed in every constituency in 2021, backed by the whole Yes movement, to ensure that even potential indie voters who wouldn't normally vote for the SNP are encouraged to do so in every Scottish constituency in that election. We want to build a single alliance. This is where we differ. We want to build a single alliance of the smaller Yes parties, Yes groups, and Yes activist individuals to stand on the list across the regions of Scotland, preferably unopposed by the SNP, to maximise the number of pro-independence MSPs and minimise, more importantly, the number of unionists elected on the list. Because if we hold it Indie Ref 2 or if we have Plan B,
Yeah.
which is a massive majority of pro-independence MSPs and over 50% of the electorate support for independence. We can then go into negotiations for independence using the next election or the Westminster elections.
Okay, that actually brings me on to a question I have here for you, Pat, because there is a massive amount of talk amongst activists, bloggers, even some elected representatives at the moment about a Plan B. And I've noticed the hashtag Scottish UDI appearing across social networks, and there is a huge call for this. It also feeds into the ideas behind the Digital Covenant and the Digital Assembly, and that the Section 30 order is not the route that we should be following. So how does the Alliance stack up on that?
Unfortunately, the SNP are the political arm, elected political arm of the Yes movement. And their route is that Plan A should be followed to fruition. But where that falls down is Boris. Boris simply has to say no. So we absolutely need a Plan B. As for UDI, a UDI will have to be declared at some point. But my view is that we need to prove to the outside world that we have more than 50% support. Now we can use India F2, or we can use the election coming up to prove 50% or more, but we can only do that as a single unit, a single Yes movement, backing the SNP on the constituency vote, letting them stand unopposed, because the polls are saying, and they have been correct to a certain extent, the polls are saying they will pick up 70 plus seats. Now, if they do that with the voting system, and it's the amended DONT system.
Yes.
DONT. It's not
yes.
DHONT.
Oh, it's not DHONT. Sorry, I call it DHONT.
DONT. The amended system means that the successful party in the constituencies will be penalised by up to 11 times division. Because
of course.
There are 8 regional areas.
Yep.
With between 8 and 9 constituencies within them, or
that's right,
9 and 10 constituencies within them, and the DONT system applies the number of 1 seats plus 1 to divide any vote picked up on the regional additional member system for additional members to the Scottish Parliament. We have 73 constituency seats and we have 56 additional member seats to allow for proportional representation. But the Yes movement have always been denied that voice within the additional member system because we haven't come together.
Yes.
If we come together, we have the potential, I'm getting a bit of feedback there, we have a potential to remove up to 34 pro-unionist MSPs who, remember, have been rejected at the constituency level. They've been rejected
in the
political voting system, and they get a backdoor entrance to Parliament to simply sit in Parliament and talk down Scotland.
Yes.
So the question I would put on behalf of the Alliance for Independence, #MaxTheYes, is we can have a pro-majority government, or would you prefer a pro-majority Parliament to support that government through either India F2 or through transition to independence? Or would you rather have up to 50 pro-unionist MPs sitting in our Parliament while we negotiate our independence?
Yeah. So as the Alliance, obviously your job would be to support the SNP to get that independence. So would the Alliance for Independence, Max the Yes party, put pressure on the SNP to put the ending of the Union in their manifesto for 2021?
It doesn't require the SNP to have it in their manifesto. It requires us to have it. It requires us to have it. And our intentions are, we have three, let me see, we have three commitments to being in the Yes movement. And that is 1, to support independence.
Yep.
2, to support IndyRef 2 if required.
Okay.
And 3, to support the Scottish Government of the time to deliver that within that first term.
Okay. So the Alliance for Independence, I mean, I know that some of you in the steering group, and I know that some of you have come across the Digital Covenant and the Assembly. Is that something that the Alliance for Independence would throw their weight behind to support in order to get that one place with that one voice to push the fight forward?
Most certainly, most certainly. And this is a call out to the Yes movement, because I know that the Digital Covenant have been working really, really hard in the background in setting this whole thing up, this blockchain. I don't profess to be an expert on it, but I do know it is as safe a voting system as you will ever have on the planet today. So if the Yes movement actually engages with the Digital Covenant, we can do away with IndyRef 2.
Yes,
because
exactly.
Using that medium and that secure medium, it's world renowned. I believe it's Nigeria. There's a number of countries using it. New Zealand.
Yeah, also Estonia. Estonia run most of their entire governance off of it, from what I've heard.
So it's tried and tested, and I think that's the message that has to get put out here. The Digital Covenant is tried and tested and proved to be absolutely secure. And if we have any savvy, we could, if we get the engagement of the whole of the Yes movement, and it's complementary to the Alliance for Independence # Max the Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
It's absolutely complementary. So I would urge and implore the Yes movement to get on board with us, because we can prove we have an absolute majority by the end of the year, if it is taken up.
Yes, and if nothing else, as we know, Nicola Sturgeon has always said that if she was to go for IndyRef 2, she'd want to see that she had about 60% support. So we could give her that, ensure that. I mean, the Assembly itself is there to help us, give us a voice, isn't it? And it's there for everybody and anybody with any idea that they have on how they think we should function as a country after independence, how they think we could achieve it, with the areas that we need reform and how we can essentially rebuild the country. The idea behind it was to pull everybody in, get all those ideas in one place, and then develop those ideas together, rather than as it works at the minute, where there are certain fragmented groups that go off and have an idea, but their idea doesn't necessarily get through the noise of everybody else's ideas.
Very true.
In the Assembly, every single person has a voice. They can still choose to use it. You don't have to use it. But if you do choose to use it, you get it on that equal basis for each and every person, rather than whoever shouts the loudest gets heard, so to speak, which, you know, I see that on social media platforms a lot. I'm good at shouting loud enough to get my point across, but I know that there's so many people that don't even engage, because they're scared of being shouted down by some of us who are extremely passionate and sometimes get a bit too keyboard warrior with it. So that was the idea behind it. I only learned about the Covenant and the Assembly idea in February, and I am also, like you, I'm a complete technophobe. So it took so much work for me to get my head around. But I'd have to say the guys, like the tech team, were really, really good and really patient with explaining it to me. And so that's why now I've got my head around it. I'm like, this is the best idea we've ever had. And that's why I'm sitting speaking to you today, because I said to them, I'm happy to volunteer to help get this idea out and to explain it to people. It's easier for a technophobe to explain than it is for some of these guys that are so involved in the technicalities of it. They struggle to put it into everyday language.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I came from. So I'm really pleased about that, because this is kind of where I see I'm probably going to push the campaign for Indy now, is through the assembly idea, because I like it. It's something I can align with fully, and it doesn't question anything, because it's basically accepting everything and allowing that diversity to flow.
It's absolute democracy.
Yes, direct democracy. I want to be able to have a say in what my council does. You know, directly, I want to be able to say, this doesn't work in our area. Whilst it might work in the city, I live rurally. This doesn't work for us. We want it done differently. And that, just so that everybody can get the help that they need. I mean, I know that you work and you volunteer within food banks and things. We've had these discussions amongst ourselves. I also work around that area. So we see firsthand on a daily basis the problems that people have.
Very much so. And COVID is the perfect example of why we need that voice. Both within the digital covenant, but also within Parliament. We need our voices represented in Parliament to make that change.
Yes.
I know you guys have a different view that the assemblies then become superior to, correct me if I'm wrong, I may be wrong, the assemblies become superior to Parliament, but ultimately Parliament passes the laws right at this minute.
Yeah, that's, I think, how I see it, or how I see the assembly working. I'm certainly sure this is how the team see the assembly working, is that because you have one place where everyone communicates together, we can have much clearer ideas in order to instruct our government to implement the policies that we want. Rather than how it sits at the moment, it tends to be that, you know, the party of power, like the SNP, they direct the narratives. They tell us what policies that we want, and then we look at them and we choose them. But in actual fact, it should be that we drive the policy by saying, these are where the problems are. We need to prioritise this as a policy. We can then feed into that policy. We can then put that policy straight to them. We can do all these things ourselves and then put it to them and instruct them to implement it. I mean, from I suppose my belief is that that's what democracy is. That is you telling them what you want and getting them to implement it, rather than the way I see it at the moment. We work, whilst we're told we live in the oldest democracy in the world, we actually are quite anti-democratic, because we work from a top-down system. We allow our governments to tell us our policy, and it should be the other way around. And that's the reform, I think, that we all need. That's how all countries should function. Policy should be driven by the people. It shouldn't be driven by the politicians.
Yes,
and more and more.
We shouldn't simply be listening to the rhetoric that we live in a democracy, because we don't.
Exactly.
Is it autocracy? It's from the top, and they decide. They look for our support to be elected.
Yes.
Saying that they will listen to the people.
Yes.
And then they get into power, and this is all political parties.
I agree with you, Pat. Yeah.
What I hope the Alliance for Independence will achieve is that bottom up, because we have an interim steering group, and we have interim regional organisers, we have an interim co-chair, co-conveners, we have an interim finance officer, we have an interim secretary. At conference, the membership, those who join and take up the right to vote within the Alliance for Independence, #MaxTheYes, they will decide what the structure will be, how the vetting system, the selection system, and who will be their candidates locally.
Yes.
It won't be anyone parachuted in.
Yeah, so it's ultimately the grassroots decision. So it's the grassroots that need to pick up the ball with this and run with it and start saying, this is what we want in our area, this is who we want to represent us.
You've got to remember, it's the grassroots who will deliver independence.
Yeah.
No political party, not one, as we've seen. SNP are quadruple mandated, and now they're going for a 5th mandate. Part of the reason for that is since 2015, they've never commanded 50% of the electorate.
Yeah.
If we as a movement come together, we can absolutely prove it. And using the digital covenant as a means of expressing that political will of the people, we have well over 60% of the support. We just have to prove it. We have to
exactly. That's
and
it.
I wholeheartedly stand behind the digital covenant as a means to prove that.
Perfect. There's one more question. Well, there's two more questions I want to ask you, and one just comes off the back of what you've just said there. Is there a way that people can join AFI at the moment? Is there a membership structure in place, or is that still being developed?
There is an interim membership. Everything's interim until we get a national conference. There's an interim membership. We have a Facebook page.
Okay.
And it's the Alliance for Independence, #MaxTheYes.
Yeah.
And you simply join. But to join, we ask you to answer 3 questions. Now, we're being very strict on this. If we don't get the answers, because some people might invite people and they don't know about it, we won't accept them. We need them to engage.
Yeah, okay.
If they engage and answer the 3 questions, they can take up membership of the page. And we will transfer that on once we launch proper to our website and Twitter feeds and all the machinations of social media.
Yes.
Because that's the main means that we have now, apart from the national. They have been really quite accommodating. In February, when we started the initial movement, they accepted comments, letters, and support or not.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I threw my support behind that myself. Yeah.
But caveat to that is it is not a platform to berate any of our fellow activists, and that includes the SNP.
Yes, yes.
We get nothing divided. We win everything united. We stand united. We win this and we deliver it. And that's the key. We have the means. We have the opportunity. Now we need to put the effort in and make it happen. And we hope to be a part of delivering that.
Perfect. Yeah, as you say,
Alliance for Independence, #MaxTheYes. I'm not going to...
I know, I agree with you. I agree. I mean, we're very lucky in that we have some really, really proactive, talented activists that have provided us with all the tools that we need now. We just need to use them. So we just need to stand up and use them. Finally, whilst you said there, we don't want division, my last question does relate slightly to that. And it's the big question of the EU. Now, of course, the SNP are standing on the automatic re-entry to the EU based on the 62% vote returned. Well, I think it's based on the 62% vote returned in 2016. ISP have mentioned EFTA in their policies, but I don't know how set in stone that is at the moment. What is AFI's take on the EU? How would AFI push the EU as a priority if they were elected to the Scottish Parliament?
Well, again, we haven't had a national conference, so this is not set in stone either. But my personal view and that of a number of members within the Alliance for Independence, #MaxTheYes, is that the question of membership of the European Union is a question for after independence. It's a question for after independence, because when we become independent, we will be out of the EU.
Yes, that's a given. Yes.
That's been stated through the referendum campaign of 2012-14, and that nothing has changed because we are still part of the UK.
Yes.
But after independence, all that changes. Because we can then put that question to the people, uninhibited by the UK government.
Yes, of course.
So that's where I stand personally. It is for the Alliance to take a political stance if they wish to. But I'm with you. I mean, EFTA would be perfect for us. We could join the Nordic nations. We could have a collaboration with the Nordic nations and Ireland. We could have a collaboration with the Celtic nations.
Yeah.
It's very simple. The choices become ours when we have independence.
Absolutely. And Scotland out with the UK and the EU question is a totally different question as well to Scotland responding to that question as a part of the UK.
Yeah.
You know, there are differences there. Like, I know many people.
The difference is Scotland doesn't have a say as part of the UK.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And that Brexit referendum highlighted that fantastically. But there's other things that need to come into play there. Like, for example, I'll give you my personal take. So I voted to remain in the EU because I felt that Scotland, as a part of the UK, needed the protections of the EU. Because I was concerned if we were removed from the EU, that the UK government would have had way too much of an open ticket to just do whatever they wanted. Scotland, as an independent country within the EU, I'm not sold on that at all. I want to have the debate. I want to see all the different options. I want to see the EFTAs on the table. I want to see how all those things would stack up for Scotland on its own as a country. I don't know if I would vote to remain in the EU now if Scotland was indie, but I voted it in 2016 because I saw it as being an important part of us being a part of the UK. So, of course, my take on that has changed massively, as have many's. I suppose I'm looking at it as that if we were to just get our independence and automatically go back into the EU, I don't see that as being democratic, because we need to be asked that question.
But the honest truth to that is that won't happen, because we cannot automatically go in. We would be removed from both the EU and the UK, and we would have to reapply. So it's a misnomer. It's just not true that we would have automatic acceptance. We would have to reply. Now, there are many who say that the EU would be more than happy to welcome us back, but we would still have to apply.
Yes, of course.
And if we have to apply, then it goes straight to the juxt of the position that we have to ask the people.
Yes.
Now, I'm the opposite from yourself. I voted to leave. Not on racist and bigoted merits of the UK or the UK government, which intimidated the media speak for a no vote and lied through its teeth, basically, but because of socialist values. Europe is a big businessman's club, and the first two rules to join Europe is you must have the free market, you must support the free market, and you must open up your markets to Europe. That doesn't happen across Europe. UK had the veto on any regulation that came through and never used it.
Yeah,
that's where we are. But the point is, we would be out of both.
Yes.
It would then bring it back to the people of Scotland. And I agree with you now on the EFTA view. We can still have a relationship, and we must have a relationship with Europe.
Yeah.
In this capitalist society, we have to trade, and we have to trade.
Of course.
Equally.
Yeah.
But on that basis, I would support EFTA.
Yeah. So the Alliance for Independence is what you're saying is would support another EU referendum for Scotland then?
No, I can't speak on behalf of the Alliance on that matter.
Just yourself. Okay. So there's no decision on that yet from the Alliance?
There's no decision because we haven't had conference and we haven't finalised the constitution on those matters.
So that'll be down to the people again?
That will be democratically decided by conference and the full membership.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying is the Alliance for Independence, everything is still up for grabs. If people want to influence what you do, then they need to come to your conference when it's announced. They need to put your ideas through your Facebook page, come to the conference when it's announced, and vote on what it is that they want to get what they want.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
it's open democracy. It's open democracy. We'll all have our views. We'll all put them forward. And then the floor will decide what we will do.
Great. So when's the conference then, Pat?
Well, lockdown is permitting. We hope to have it in September.
Okay, great.
We were going to have it the end of June.
Yeah.
COVID came in, so we're thinking July, August, but it's now more likely to be September. But I implore anybody that wants to see a free Scotland to join the Alliance for Independence and help us to shape the way forward for that platform. That platform is open to all, including the ISP.
Yeah.
Because there is the argument that we may split the list vote if there is more than one pro-independence party standing, but then where was it? Multiple parties.
Yes.
That then would apply to the unionists, because that's where they pick up most of their seats, and there are 3-4 of them. He's been determined. They managed to compete for their vote.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with competition.
No, not at all.
But we would prefer a single unitary party, to maximise the yes vote.
Yes.
And maximise the pro-independence representation at Holyrood on behalf of the people and the Yes movement.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much for that, Pat, and thanks very much for coming on to chat to me. That's been really interesting. You've given loads of information for people out there. Hopefully they will now be directed to your Facebook page and they'll have a look at what you're doing and they'll join your conference and they'll fight for what they can through that medium. So I want to wish, before you go, Pat, I want to wish you good luck with everything. And I've no doubt that as soon as we're back out there rallying and marching again, we'll see face to face and we can catch up on it then.
Thank you very much, Dan. And again, please come and join us. It's the Alliance for Independence, # Max the Yes.
Great. Thanks, Pat. Okay,
Thank
see you
Dan.
later.
Bye.
Bye. So now I'm joined by Brian Allan. He volunteered to come and speak to us today and give us a more personal perspective on activism within the independence movement. As a fellow volunteer with the Digital Covenant, Brian and I have met and chatted before and also through meetings and things at Aberdeen. So welcome, Brian.
Hello, nice to be here.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good, good. So, Brian, first of all, could you tell us, why did you decide to become an activist for Scottish independence?
Well, I suppose the main thing I would say that's what most normal countries are like. Most normal countries are independent, and I don't see why Scotland can't be the same. But as far back as I can remember, I always thought that being independent was a normal thing. And I always felt uneasy at school and stuff like that when we were getting taught history and such like. There was always like an uneasy feeling that we weren't getting the truth, and also that things that you did hear didn't match up, you know.
So did you get that from your parents as well? Had they taught you about Scottish history and Scottish traditions through your lifestyle or culture in any way that you could make that different comparison, or you just didn't see it for what it was?
Yeah, very little. They were kind of Labour stalwarts, if you like.
Okay.
I never really got involved with much, never got involved with community or whatever. And I was kind of like that myself for quite a long time, until I got a bit older. And,
okay.
I never really did anything about independence or didn't really listen to the news that much either. It was an uneasy feeling that you weren't getting told the truth anyway, so why bother? You know?
Yes, yes. Yes, okay.
Eventually, when the referendum come,
Yes.
just voted SNP and that was it. And I was really, really disappointed that we didn't get it because I thought it was in the bag.
Oh, do you mean the yes, the referendum in
Yes,
2014, the yes no vote? And did you campaign in the up running to that one?
No, I never did anything. That's why I was really annoyed at myself. So I didn't do anything for that whatsoever. But
Okay.
I followed the news and then I reckoned, oh, it's in the bag. And then the vow came out with the Daily Record.
Yeah.
And that swayed everything because pretty much I thought we had it. And it kind of opened my eyes that we didn't get told the truth from our politicians, but also the newspapers were in collusion with them. And they were kind of not getting the truth about anything. And so I decided that I'd start getting involved in. Now, I didn't really get involved directly in politics. I got more involved with the community.
Okay.
Did a lot of work with these community centres for a while. And, you know, I've never really been politically motivated. And I never really felt, this probably come from my mum and dad, that politics was a waste of time.
Okay,
you know?
yeah.
But then I came to realise that politics is actually everything.
Yes.
So once I started to do that, I started to look around and I came across some of the Commonweal information. And I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
And I looked to see if there was a group in Aberdeen. There had been a group, but it was just basically a space on Facebook and they weren't doing anything. So I kind of just left that.
Okay.
After a wee while, I joined the SNP, went along to some of their meetings, did a wee bit of work for them. I had problems with my back and my legs at the time, so I couldn't go door knocking, but I could use the laptop. So I was doing some stuff on there in the background. But I never really bought into it. I didn't feel inspired by what they were doing. And
I can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that, yeah.
The main reason I joined with them was to get the information of what was really going on, try and get a feel for it. But that didn't happen either. So the educational aspect didn't come through. But maybe I didn't put myself forward enough for that because I'm relatively quite a shy guy, really, you know, up until recently.
Yeah, would you believe I've been a bit the same?
the pressure, I feel there's the pressure on to try and get something done. I didn't really feel guilty that I didn't do anything in 2014, but I feel I really need to do something now. You know, it's like a sense of duty now that I need to really get involved. So I got involved with a few groups in Aberdeen. Commonweal was kind of in abeyance because nothing was happening there. So I went along to Aberdeen, and I found them much more collegiate, if you like. They were much more people to get friendly with and stuff like that. And maybe they had a wee bit more of a social thing going as well, you know. So
yeah, that's true. They had a great bunch at Aberdeen. I would definitely give them a shout out because, as you know, I'm also a member. So yeah, we've done things together. I've helped on the stall before, and I don't make it in a lot because it's far away. But yeah, it is a really good group.
Well, I'm on the south side of Aberdeen, and I started helping them out with the stall and helping out with the meetings. So really a great bunch of guys, like you say, and you know, they're no stupid with it either. They're really good at sharing their information and very friendly and welcoming people in, you know. So they are a good bunch.
Yeah.
I also started to get involved with a group in Aberdeen. It's like, I think it started off by the SDUC. So it's a part of that. So it's unions and other
activists. The trade union.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a trade union and other activists, if you like, people who are more active. So I started to get involved with that and going along to some of their meetings. Now, Aberdeen are part of that as well now, and so are Commonweal. So it's been a case of trying to bring everybody together.
Yes.
And make a big movement and make a big noise in Aberdeen. We can start to get the council to listen to us. That's part of the idea from that, you know. So it's working really well, and it was going really, really well until COVID started.
Yes, and the lockdown and...
So they had a meeting space, rooms for everybody to come along and do their activism, if you like. There was books there, dividing your knowledge about the history of politics. Really a lot of good information there, and not just in this country, across the globe.
Yeah.
So it was a really good way to learn things, and lots of passionate people there, and then lots of other groups coming in. And many of the groups are environmentalists as well, and for me that's always been very important. In fact, that was more important to me than separating from England. That was never that big an issue until after 2014, when I saw how they behaved. And I think paying attention to Westminster and how they do things, really we need to get moving forward and get away from that. There's no way we're going to make headway with that shower behind us. So we really need to break away now, I think. But more important for me is the environment, and making sure that we leave a space for our grandchildren that they can use.
Yes.
Because otherwise we're in big trouble. You know? So.
Yeah. Well, let's face it, the whole purpose is the future, of course, isn't it? So that brings me now to, I may not already know the answer to this question, but what is it that you think is the most important issue facing Scotland today? So if you take everything into account, what is the most important thing?
Well, I suppose really what it all boils down to is democracy and having a proper say. Because I think if everybody had a proper say, people realise that we're in trouble, that we have to sort out the environmental issues, and we need to make headway with that. And I think if we had a proper democracy, we'd be able to push forward. Scotland could take the lead and, in a sense, show much of the rest of the world how to behave and get moving with it. And I think there's a great opportunity here. In a sense, although COVID is quite nasty, and it's really disrupted things, and it's making people take a look at what they're doing, how they're living. I've always said that in the back of my mind, that we weren't living properly. We couldn't really keep just using things and throwing things away. But
yes, this disposable society that we've become, it's been a massive, actually, especially over the last 10 years, the consumerism and the waste is massive, isn't it?
So much of my work locally was about trying to reduce waste and start bringing in a circular economy on the south side of Aberdeen. So that was part of the main things that we're doing. Things like men's sheds and stuff like that, so that we're using old stuff, bringing to new. Commonweal is talking a lot about that. But the real issue is democracy, because you can have all these views and wants, but if you can't sway the politicians through proper democratic process, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
That's where I think the digital covenant really works. I think that's a beautiful way to be able to go and get our democratic say.
Yes.
And the main thing there, though, is to have the information that's associated with the decision makings that you make is true and proper and recorded.
Yes.
We're not dealing with fake news anymore, because that's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And of course, the more money you have, the more fake news you can generate and push out there. So it's about democratic and fairness and equality. These things are very important to me.
Yes,
so
sorry, carry on.
Well, so from a democratic point of view, we really need to try and push ahead, get the covenant signed, join up to the Assembly as soon as possible, have your say, or at least make sure your say is heard there. Start to do our politics in a different way.
And the interesting concept, of course, and it does come back to the democracy idea, doesn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, true democracy is the people instructing. So the only way that we can instruct is if we all get together and build the policies that we want to see together, and then present them and say, this is what we want, this is what we've decided. But to have everyone in one place doing that, it's all very well to say, oh, but we vote for political parties. But that's where the division comes in, because people then choose a party for the policy they like, or as we know in Scotland, it's basically a party for union and party for not. And it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about what we want to see in our communities, how we want to see our country function. And we have loads of people out there that have all these ideas. And like we have Mike Fennick talking about circular, the yes economy, and how we can build on that. And he's looking at experimenting with that. And we have people looking at various different constitutions. I haven't even read them, but they're all focused on the people. We are actively doing this ourselves, but we need more people to join us, because we can't decide alone. It has to be a collective. The whole country has to decide. And having that space, having that digital assembly where we can all communicate and documents can be uploaded and we can all make amendments to them, and everybody can, and we can all see where polarized views will then become much more compromised, the more people that come into the mix and the more people that communicate with it. It's a brilliant tool that's been built for us to use, and I'm really excited about it. But yeah,
there's two aspects there that I find really important, and one of them is the speed, because I don't think we have that much time left to be able to stop the globe getting too warm and getting that runaway effect. We've only got probably less than 10 years now, you know. I don't know if you hear, you know, the David Bowie song, 7 years. That's all we've got. So
yeah.
it's going to be very appropriate soon. I'll be playing a lot of it. 5 years. So anyway, the speed of moving forward, and I think the digital covenant will do that for us. Once we get the assembly moving, then we can be using our phones to vote, and we can vote really quickly. It'll be less costly to do for the nation, but also it'll speed up things. So if there's a specific issue, like they did in Ireland with the what was it? Oh, I can't remember.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Sorry, Brian.
I'll find out later and give you a shout. But anyway, there's something they did in Ireland, so they did a referendum on it, specifically just for one point, and that seemed to go okay. Now, there's no reason why we can't do specific reasons, issues, and just focus on specific issues and do a referendum on that. But it's too costly and it's too unwieldy the way it is now. But with the digital covenant, and on your phone, the digital covenant, once all of that work's been completed, it opens up to a future where you just vote on your phone. And it opens up access to lots and lots of people who wouldn't normally get involved in politics. I mean, if it's a in at night, do you go along to the polling station? Maybe not, you know, if you don't know the right arguments.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. I think our politics is framed too much around the structures that we currently have. Politics is every day. It's how the schools function. It's how the community services are. It's your transport. It's your infrastructure. It's the things that we use every day that many people complain about every day. But by having an assembly and achieving those 3 million signatures, it can engage that whole host of people that don't vote. I mean, I think in 2014 referendum, it was 800,000 people in Scotland who didn't vote. That is, you know, almost more than a quarter, well, almost a quarter of eligible voters or something like that. I'm calculating quickly in my head here. I could be wrong. But do you know what? That's a significant chunk of people that aren't engaging. And they aren't engaging because they're not interested in the left and the right, in the Tory versus the SNP or whatever else. They're interested in having their communities, their countries and their services run right. You know, they're interested in having security. They're interested in having good lifestyles. And the only people that can instruct how that can be done are the people themselves. If they don't come and say what they want, how do we know what they want? So what essentially the covenant is saying, isn't it, is, you know, tell us what you want. Bring us your ideas.
Right. But a lot of politicians, they don't want to know what they want. They want to do what they want.
Yes.
And for certain, you know, for the Tories especially, they don't want everybody to vote because they know that people that are missing are the ones that are likely not going to vote for them. You know, so it's in their it's to their benefit that not everybody votes, and this is one way the covenant will help with that as well. It's the easier process. It's really important, and you know this is all important for me. And the reason I really got involved in the very first place is because I want a place that's safe and better and more democratic, more equal. All of these things, I want that better for my kids and for your kids and people who are going to follow. And I want a globe that's not going to burn up, you know, become a desert. The thing about the digital covenant was, when I first looked at it, I kind of thought, you know, this could easily look like a scam, you know? And so I didn't just leave it. I normally would just leave things like that, but I was interested in it. I thought it had great value. So what I did is I started to go online and have a look and try and find out about these different things
Yes.
that I'd never ever heard about before, like blockchain, like
Yeah.
distributed ledgers, and
Yeah.
all that kind of things. Now, once I went on there, it didn't look that far out. It was easy enough to understand. It just took a bit of time and a bit of just prodding. And
Yeah.
I started to speak to the guys that were involved. And
Yeah.
now I fully trust that what they're doing is a splendid thing. Actually, Scotland can be really proud of these guys.
Oh, they should be, massively, massively.
Because they're taking the lead in this. And again, there you go, Scotland, that too poor, too wee, too stupid, that country is now leading the globe in these kind of things, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
time that we really moved on, got our independence, and started to push forward to make this world a better place.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. But build the world you want to see, essentially. Perfect. Listen, I think we're just running out of time, Brian, but thank you so much for chatting and giving us your perspective. It's been really interesting learning about all the different campaigns you've been involved in, and all your different activism and your priorities, and it's great to give that perspective. I'm sure there are lots of other people out there in the movement that 100% agree with you. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and I'll no doubt chat to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Dave, because we're doing this live and not recording, neither of us know, it's quite exciting, neither of us know that we're actually going live.
We're live now.
Good afternoon, Mr. Llewellyn.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fenwick.
I understand you've had a kind of tranquil, not very exciting day.
Absolutely.
You want to tell me what's been going on in your life today, Dave?
Well, I'm just back in the door now, spending most of the day as part of the convoy that went down to Berwick to the border, as seemingly everybody on Facebook knows about already. But basically, I got contacted 2 days ago by Ian McNeill, who's regularly does Bridges for Indy, to say, look, we're not quite sure, but if Nicola gets rid of the 5 mile limit tomorrow, how about we go down to the border and do some stuff down there? So I says, aye, I'm in. Now, he'd been talking to other people about this, like Cliff Bridges that we all know, and people for the Freedom Convoy. So basically, they've been sorting this out over the last couple of days. But until this morning, we didn't actually know if we were going to be doing it. So everything was being planned, and there was loads of folk that we didn't get a hold of, because we were all inviting people that we know ourselves, and nobody knew who'd invited anybody else. And some people done up some folk, didn't they? But so basically, we ended up with 8 cars and a yes bike, well, 8 cars and vans and a yes bike, plus Ian's trailer. So we met up at Newbridge this morning, left there at 11 o'clock, and drove down to the border. The video that's on Facebook has got us a mile out until
with a growing number of yes supporters beginning to follow you as you did your live streams.
Well, it was nuts. I mean, basically, when you sit and watch Gordon Ross or something like that, he gets maybe 3, maximum 400 live viewers a time, and that's the biggest thing that you see on a live stream. So as it was going up and saying, oh, we're starting to reach Gordon Ross material, and then we just shot away past, and it was like, then it got up to 1,200 live, and it was going into fantasy territory. By that time, the rain started on my phone. I had to stop it and then restart it, and I restarted it in landscape so it would go. And that video had 2,500 live views. At one time, and I checked it. It was less than 2 hours ago we made it, and I had 80,000 views. So, like Scotland, the Yes movement has obviously realised that something was going on. I mean, nobody's been able to do anything at all this year. We've done stuff. Yeah. We've done stuff, obviously, digitally and things like that. But it was the first time that we'd actually got together for some real skullduggery, and what better way to do it than in no man's land between the Scottish and English border that Boris says didn't exist.
Who was with you on the journey?
There was me, Ian McNeil, Pat Lee, Cliff Serby, Lorna Taylor,
and one very famous dog.
Sheldon. Jane was there as well with Sheldon.
Sheldon was there.
So it was completely nuts. It was absolutely mental, and there was a freelance photographer turned up about an hour in, who had gone down to Berwick to do a thingy about the pubs being open down there, and he'd done his thing down there, and he was coming back up, and then he saw us. But before he went away, he says, "Bugger the pubs in Berwick." He says, "This is a much better story." So he sat and got loads and loads of photographs with them standing with their hazmat suits on with the flag in front of the big banner. I doubt there's anybody going to be watching this that didn't actually see the video, but if you didn't, you'll be able to see them shortly. It's absolutely mental.
I took some still photographs from when you were doing the live streams, which I've got aside and ready to post them. But it's absolutely fantastic. You're all heroes. No, you were, Dave, because there's a personal risk involved in that. That's not to be ignored.
Well, we were a wee bit careful. I mean, like, Cliff normally takes his kids with him. He didn't take the kids with this time, just in case, because it is a serious political issue at the minute, which is why we did it.
Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, Boris said there's no border. Nicola says, well, if she goes and starts doing her policies in Newcastle. So we thought, well, at the end of the day, if we go down to no man's land, and basically we're getting the numbers of caravans and mobile homes and posting them. It's like, okay, if you want to risk bringing a virus into Scotland, we'll name and shame you. So there you go.
Without getting into too serious things, seriously, on behalf of anyone who is a Yes supporter in Scotland, thank every single one of you. Absolutely brilliant for what you did.
It was great fun. It's like when you try to organise something, you can never actually see how it's going to go, and then sometimes you just catch a wave, and God did we catch one today. As I say, those numbers, and it's just, I think every yeser in the country knows what we're doing, and 99% of them are behind us, and the other 1% are still waiting on something.
It's also very important, not just from a political point of view, but just literally from a medical point of view. I mean, the latest reports are that the R number in various parts of England has gone above 1,
Yeah, London, I saw that this
You
morning.
know, and you sit down and say, wait a minute, you know, Boris Johnson, what on earth are you doing? Encouraging people to start going out and start drinking, start standing next to her. The police can't cope with people having sort of out of lockdown street demonstrations. It's not good. And the fact that you have highlighted it, Dave, for that reason alone, ignore everything else to do in independence, just from the pure medical reason, we've got a virus and we've got to try and get it stopped.
Yep. Well, basically, the way we saw it was that if we wanted to have an independence thing, we had one on a bridge, and we've all done it. But due to the particular sensitivity with the virus situation, and the fact that the Prime Minister of the UK is saying that there's no border, and yet and basically encouraging people to fire over it willy-nilly, we thought, okay, it might not make a difference, but if somebody takes a photograph of that the day, we didn't know it was going to go mental at the time. If somebody takes a photograph of that and somebody catches it, it can happen. And as I say, I didn't realise, but I think you sent me a link earlier on about a national article today saying 73%. And as I say, I mean, like, it is possible. There are two different laws that allow it to be done if there's a political will, and I believe that Nicola Sturgeon has been pushed in that direction by the complete intransigence of the Tory government. It's utterly nonsense what they're doing. And as I say, like, I think not so much what we did today, but the response to what we did is going to cause a lot of pressure on people, because that's
for all the right reasons, Dave.
Of course,
because no one wants this virus to spread, and people going past saying it doesn't affect us. They're in their caravan and we'll just go to wherever we want to go. We've all in Scotland, I think across the board, adhered to the advice we've been given. Yep. Don't go too far, do it this way.
Yep.
Come next week. Today was the first day I put on a mask all day as I went out.
Mm-hmm.
And that is all part of what we're trying to do. It's very simply keep people healthy and not have them die off.
Yep.
Listen, can I just give you a warning, my friend?
Yeah.
I've been promising everyone on everything that there's a song that you sing that's going to appear sometime in this. We've got the good people at the round table 1320 set up to play this. I've just got to give them the nod when that happens. So that'll keep everyone interested. I want that to be a teaser while you and I maybe discuss why we're doing the Twa Auld Heids. I want to read you something. I'm going to pull it up on my screen. Just bear with me a wee second. This was a response to one of the polls we did. It comes from a lady called Pamela Murray. I'll shorten it, but I want to read what she said. I think there are more than simply A and B. When we've been posting the polls, Dave, we've said A and B, and we've now extended it into something else. I'll come on to that. She then goes on to think, and I think this is generally true, I used to think that all we were waiting on was evidence of a stable majority of pro-Indy voters. But now I realise it's not as clear-cut as that, given how even the new digital covenant is. Are we in fact in the early stages of developing our independent actuality? New people are coming forward. We do need more coherent views on how we go forward. Now, I read that very carefully because I think there's a truth in that after 2014, the next stage of this, because we kept going forward as a yes movement,
yep.
The general thinking was we'll be going for another referendum. We had the discussion, and what we are trying to do, the purpose of what we are trying to do, is put on the table the different views that people are having in this, now that we've got beyond just what we're calling Plan A, if you like, which is we just go for another Section 30 referendum and just anticipate Boris says no. So we started with Chris McElhenney because he's bringing forward a suggestion which he wants to get into the SNP conference and see how that goes. Danger in that, from my point of view, is that Section 30 is involved. And I want to make this comment more broadly. When you and I are doing the interviews with different people, what we're both trying to do is remain fairly neutral, not completely neutral, and let the person who's got a plan put it before everyone for them to listen to.
Yep.
And if you watch the video, then the poll maybe makes sense. If you haven't watched the video, the poll will just stand out. Someone said that in one of the posts, which is you need to be very explicit what Plan A and Plan B is before I can vote. Well, the answer to that is to watch the video, listen to the person putting forward the proposals. As best you can, you and I try and remain neutral. It's impossible to do that, but I challenge, as an example, Chris, on the fact that I see Section 30 basically as a weapon. A weapon at the worst is to humiliate Scotland. We have no power to change anything. That is wrong, but Section 30 allows that view to be held, not by the people in Scotland, but be held by the rest of the UK, and in particular the extreme right wing. We have the power to decide your future. I also used it as a weapon where I said, I worry that the assumption that Boris is going to say no could be wrong. And I deliberately threw that at Chris to try and draw him on that conclusion, which is he could say yes, but it would be with conditions. You and I know, other people don't know, that we have an invitation out to Pete Wishart, who has expressed entirely different views, I think, than people were expecting a wee while ago.
Yep.
I'd love to get Joanna Cherry on. I'd like to get Mike Russell on, all of whom have a part to play in where Scotland is going. But I'll throw it back at you. Am I explaining that correctly, what you and I are trying to do with this series of videos? It's not to be pontifical ourselves. We have our own individual views, but it's to try and let the yes community, the people who will eventually deliver independence, hear other people's views, because we've got more than one view coming out at the moment.
Yeah, I think basically the independence movement are probably one of the most politically aware movements on the planet. They've got a pretty good idea of what's happening. We've had to deal so much with double speak from unionist parties in London, whether Tories or Labour or Lib Dems when they were in coalition. At the end of the day, it's like we know when someone's spinning us a line, and I think it comes down to a point that when, if I can give you an example, when Mark McNaught did his interview with Ian Blackford last week, it's like Mark had come on and started talking about the Covenant, and Ian just trotted out the same line that he would have did in Prime Minister's question time, and it's like, oh, that was a Syrian, and it's like, okay, it's you recognise it right away. You think he shouldn't do that. He's one of ours. So I think it's important that we have got as much information as possible, rather than just party dogma or whatever, so that we can make our own minds up, because we're big enough to be able to take it, and we're smart enough to be able to use it, which is not necessarily a good thing for politicians. And I'm not saying about anybody particularly, I'm talking about all of them, because at the end of the day, they've all got agendas that we don't have. And I think that once you put out, I mean, we're obviously behind independence, and as far as I'm concerned, I'll take it any way you can get it, and support anything that is liable to work. And I think the more choice you have, the better decisions you'll make.
One of the things that came out of the discussion with Chris McElhenney, not in the discussion itself, but in reaction to it, was the very strong views that are held on not going with a Section 30. Now, that wasn't the purpose of the actual programme, but it was the result of the programme, or part of the result of the programme. And that's what I think is important, because we then move on to whether Section 30 in its own, what we had thought of maybe back in 2015, 2016, Plan A, if you want to call it. From my perspective at the moment, Plan A is diminishing in its importance, and there's other choices coming up. Now, you and I know, and I think we can advise people of this, that very, very recently, following 2 articles in the National, a person called Jim Fairley, person who's Farmers for Yes, has come up with other ideas on what should be doing. And you and I are hoping that the next Twa Auld Heids will be involving Jim Fairley. And again, that's a question of getting information out to people. You know that today I set up a page called the Twa Auld Heids. And the intention of that is very simply, I hope that you and I have still to agree this, but my thinking is we take each of the programmes and post them onto that page, so that at any time if someone says, well, Chris McElhenney has got a view, they can go to that video and see what that view was. And as we go through the various things, I also hope that we'll be able to feature maybe discussions that have taken place. One of them took place this afternoon with Nick Russell from the 500 Miles. And he is explaining how he developed Yes Day Scotland, his knowledge of blockchain. And that's a thing that I think is very important. It's one of the other things that is so crucial in my opinion. And that video explained why it's so important we get people to sign up to the covenant and take part in the People's Assembly. It is the one and only one possible platform for allowing everyone who is in support of independence not to have to fit into any other idea. They can build their own ideas, and then they can make it highly visible to anyone that's interested across the world what the overall view of Scotland and people who want independence actually is. Again, it's something we need to try and develop, and I'm hoping that page might allow us to do that, Dave.
Say like I've known quite a bit about Nick for the last 2 years, and I know he was heavily involved with the Scottish Constitution, which Mike Russell has, but obviously you can't start a constitution unless you've got an independent country. But I believe Nick's been doing a lot of stuff in the background. I haven't seen it today yet.
The main point he puts over is the security of the system. And I think if there's anyone worried about anything to do with it, that is where it comes in. The guy knows what he's talking about. He did it in relation, some of the work he did in relation with the unit at Edinburgh University to try and verify it. He has the background knowledge, the technical knowledge, the absolutely niche, detailed knowledge of what blockchain is about. He can supervise everything that's going on, look at everything that's going on. And in the piece he did this afternoon, he gave his word that the thing was secure. And I encourage everyone to do it. Can I jump for a second to the Yes groups that we had on?
Yes.
I want in particular, and you know why I'm doing it, to refer to Ali from Butterflies Rising.
Yeah,
right?
She was a find.
Absolutely brilliant. However, she started saying, don't have a plan, have a project, and have a timescale to that project. So say what it is you're trying to do and say when you're going to achieve it. That to me is also part of what you and I are doing with these programs. For me, it's a personal opinion, the decisions that the Yes movement must be able to see that have been taken by the Yes movement itself must be evidenced by the end of this year. I'm ignoring the promise about I'm not ignoring it, I'm just putting it to one side. We will have a referendum this year. But I think if we're talking about next year's elections, if we're talking about what happens at that time, everything has got to be narrowed down in some way. If it's possible to achieve it, it's going to be difficult. But I'm hoping what we do fits in with what Ali was talking about, is we sit down and say, right, by the end of this year, we've looked at plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. As many plans are out there. We've looked at how the indie parties, ISP and Alliance, are projecting themselves, because the Alliance will launch. Quick comment on that, Dave. It's quite peculiar. I took part in the original steering group. It's where you and I end up in yin and yang. I took part in the original steering group for the Alliance. Actually argued for the name and achieved the name Alliance for Independence. Then, over problems I had with how they were wanting to take things forward, they're resolving them. But I saw at the time I was just going to end up causing trouble if I stayed on the steering group. Here are you, 2 months later, organising for the Alliance, right? You've got your local community started in that. That is another part of what I think, not necessarily for the Alliance, but just generally, that it begins to focus people in on another option, which is how are these independent parties going to play a part in it. Final comment on that. Chris McElhenney, for me, during the whole interview, raised one very particular point, which is, if there is a common way of taking forward the ideas for independence, a common wording, I asked Pat Lee to confirm for me whether it was something he would object to, is if to achieve independence, all the political parties, despite the differences on domestic policy, say between SNP and Greens, if they have in their manifesto a commonly worded statement as to how they wish to achieve independence for us, that is very, very important. I'll throw that back at you, your own views.
I agree. I mean, as I say, obviously, the SNP are by far the largest party, and I think they should obviously take the lead as far as that's concerned. And the other parties, if they want to have any chance of using a popular vote in a Scottish election, the wording on independence has to be exactly the same for every single party, every single independent that's no matter who. The wording on independence, if it's exactly the same for all of them, then each vote that's made for any of them will count for independence. And it may come down to a popular vote. And as I say, if you get a popular vote, that is your plebiscite. It's as legal as a referendum to declare independence. And it's not UDI. You'll basically be declaring independence or revoking the union or whatever it is. You'll be doing that on the basis of a legal plebiscite that will be internationally recognisable. As I say, I do have reservations about whether you could do a majority of seats, in spite of the fact that it was actually Westminster that set up the voting system, as they did for the one in Ireland 100 years ago, and Ireland are still using it to this day. So it's like
you prefer the idea of the number of votes cast.
I think if you're using it as a plebiscite, the way I would go is, if you get a maximum number of the seats, you should be holding an advisory referendum, and if you win that advisory referendum, you should call it. If you get a maximum, if you get a majority of the popular vote, like the last couple of polls have said that would happen, if you get a majority of the popular vote, then basically you can declare. Because there's your plebiscite, and there's not a single country in the world could say that you don't have a majority.
Right. I'm not going to drag you much further into this serious thing. I'm going to ask the people at the round table to start getting your song ready. I've told everyone they can't miss this, and I'll tell you folks, this is unbelievable. It's short, but it's pointed.
It's the shortest song I've ever written.
I think at the end of it, there's a sign that you and I cooked up, and we've to thank Doug from Yes Elgin for putting this into our heads. in the discussion we had with the yes groups, Doug was talking about Scotland being the safe place.
Yeah.
You and I had a wee discussion, and I think you've drawn up a graphic which comes at the very end of the video. I'm going to ask people to try and give us votes out of 10 on that graphic, because I think it's a graphic that epitomises Scotland just now, and certainly epitomises what you and the other guys were up to earlier on today.
And we were unsure whether this video would be allowed to be shown. So if you've got any children watching, cover their eyes. Are you going with this, my friend?
Your section 30 up your arse. You can stick your section 30 up your arse. You can stick your section 30 up where it's dark and dirty. You can stick your section 30 up your arse. You can snort your section 30 up your beak. You can snort your section 30 up your beak. Working the youth are jotters, wrapped up there with their snorters. You can snort your section 30 up your beak. Chuck your section 30 in the bin. You can chuck your section 30 in the bin. All the unions out of luck, can fuck it in the bucket. You can chuck your section 30 in the bin. You can stick your section 30 up your arse. You can stick your section 30 up your arse. You can stick your section 30 up where it's dark and dirty. You can stick your section 30 up your arse.
They got to come back to watching it and make comments on it. It's actually quite tricky. It affects the mind somewhat.
Yes, it definitely does. And then you worry, like I did a couple of things where I had to record, I pre-recorded and then didn't like it. So then recorded again, and it was, can I get all the words in or not, is the very difficult thing to know, you know.
For the people that are watching it, they don't know that we weren't able to see the video and the song because we're on the Zoom. We didn't have the separate things. So we're now live again. So I want to welcome Diane Matheson to join us for the rest of the chat. Diane, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Hey, Dave. How are you guys today?
Doing fine.
Did you have an eventful day, did you, Dave? Out and about?
No, I've just been sitting here waiting on this starting all day.
I got a bit of a surprise this morning, I'd have to say.
Did you?
Yes, I didn't know anything about that. So, yeah, that was awesome.
Neither did anybody, as I say. It was kept. We were worried the police found it before we went and stopped it. The last time I mentioned something about Berwick, I got a phone call 4 hours later for a policeman on a number that nobody had. So it's like it was kept very, very hush hush. But it was amazing.
Yeah, no, it looked awesome. Next time, invite me though. Invite me. I like all that sort of stuff.
We knew you were going to be busy with this.
That's true.
I had advance notice of it, but on the basis we were meant to be doing a show later on, I stayed at home. But the main thing, to keep it secret, a lot of people, Diane, wanted to go on that and said, you know, why couldn't you? Answer was, if you give advance notice of a thing, specifically that thing, you're going to get someone blocking off the lay-by so that no one can actually do what you're planning to do. So It had to be kept 100% secret. Can I say to you that I was very impressed with your discussion, firstly, with Ruth Watson. Incredible lady, knows exactly what she's doing. Yeah. And at some stage, I know Dave and I are going to maybe invite Ruth back on to have a further discussion on it. Maybe not for a wee while, but there's a lot going on and Ruth's playing a part in that. But I was particularly impressed with your discussion with David Younger. He started touching on things that I have opinions on. Very knowledgeable guy. Your reaction to how you got on doing those
Yeah, it was fascinating actually, because although something that I knew bits about, it was neither of those two topics were things that I knew a lot about. So hearing much more about the Keep Scotland the brand got me actually interested in how we could roll that out within our own local communities and start speaking to retailers and things about it. And it was interesting to hear that essentially it's our campaign. So it was good to put it out there so that we could let people know that it's actually us that need to take it up, and it's us that need to carry that campaign if we're to have any success with it. You know, Ruth, while she spearheads it, it's meant to be for the grassroots. So it was good to get all the information out there about it, and it was nice for me to learn. But the UBI conversation with David was fascinating. Really fascinating. I don't know if you're aware, my kind of career has been around finance, and particularly public sector finance, and now I work in the third sector. So I have a lot of knowledge within finance, but not so much within like the UBI policy area, or so much on the yes economy things, work that you've been doing yourself. So to interview David, we actually set to do that interview one night, and then with the volume of information that came out of it, I actually said, I think we're going to need to consider how we frame this, because it really is a huge topic, and it's much more complex than I think most people realise initially. There's much more to it, and there's much more out with UBI that you need to consider in order to implement a policy like that. It's like almost like UBI would be part of a solution, but we'd have to consider a whole host of other things to go along with it. And that's not something that I realised initially. So that was a huge learning experience for me. And now I'm like, ooh.
It's where the Assembly will play its part as part
definitely.
of the covenant.
Definitely.
I always use a phrase frequently called follow the money. And it's not the fact that you're giving someone a universal basic income. It's where the income actually has to be spent. For instance, are you happy it goes to a private landlord who now knows that it's a perfectly secure income for him to take out a loan on to buy another property to rent out to more people who are getting the universe? Or should we be looking at it and saying, well, is a job guarantee a better way of going? I'm not suggesting that I have finalised my views on this, very far from it, but I do worry about certain things when you follow the money and just say, where is that going? There's maybe alternative ways of thinking that through, and I think that has to be done. But it was a good discussion you had with David.
Yeah, it was. Sorry, excuse my dog. Yeah, no, it was. It was fascinating, and actually made me want to go and learn more about UBI, but not just about UBI, to tie it into the economy as a whole. And I really enjoyed and I suppose in a sort of personal basis, in recent years, I've moved kind of how I work and what I do. So I was always predominantly finance focused, but I found it quite boring. But how do you get out of a job when that's your income and you have to pay your mortgage and the bills and put fuel in the car? How do you change your career if you've got nothing to fall back on? I was lucky enough that I managed to work my way through that to change slightly what I do, and I now have more project-based work. But most people aren't that lucky, and so they can't go and succeed. And I think, especially at our age, I think when you are approaching maybe around about the 40 mark, you tend to want more fulfillment from your work. You know, you almost change from that career-driven to, I would like to do something that I'd be fulfilled with. I've got another 25 years at least to work in my life. Why can't I do something that fulfills me? But you can't make that change because of your financial circumstances. So it does start to question, do we do things wrong? You know, have we got it the wrong way around?
The way the pension situation is going, if you happen to be 40 thinking you're going to have another 25 years, it's beginning to stretch out. You've maybe got another 40 years before you get your pension.
Mike,
yeah, well, that's it.
She's not getting back on again. She just age shamed the 2 years, by the way.
Hey, listen, I even got my daughter to put these plaits in my hair so I would look a bit younger today.
I'm growing a pigtail without having a barber around.
Listen, there's quite a few people doing that just now, I think.
Can I drag you into another thing that came up on the discussion with the yes groups?
Yeah,
and
sure.
Dave and I haven't really explored it. Dave is quite frequently my source of knowledge for what's going on in the background. Barbara from Yes Elgin mentioned her worries over Michael Gove. And I only then did a wee bit of research to find out what she was worried about. but apparently he's set up a pro-union Keep It All Together committee with a number of other ministers, and they have 20 staff working for them. Did you know about that, Dave?
No.
I knew he was up to this. I didn't know about the 20 staff, but I did know that he was putting this sort of it's a little civil service think tank kind of government financed Hoorah Henry Club.
It's part of the government's regime, part of the government actual makeup. And the whole idea is to find every single way they can to strengthen the union. Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. And that's what was worrying. I think that's what was worrying Barbara. It's now worrying me, because that's the enemy we are going to have to fight.
It's like,
sorry. And we're sending our tax money down to help support it. That's
well, as far as that's concerned, I would stop that instantly. I think basically we could stop sending an awful lot of tax down south right away, and there are ways of doing that legally. But of course, once again, you need a political will.
Listen, without interrupting any further chat, I did this the other night, and we expanded again. One of the things that is central to everything, no matter what the plan is, it tends to concentrate on there at some stage being a referendum. Way back last year, with the help of David McGowan from Unchained Media, I did a series of videos, and one of them in specific terms deals with referendums and the Referendum Scotland Act, which was put through the Parliament. Diane, I don't think you'll have seen this video, and I'm going to ask the people at the round table. Dave and I won't be able to watch it because we're on the Zoom thing, but I think you've got a device beside you which would allow you to watch it. It eventually leads to a petition that I've got in the Parliament, but I'd like you to watch the video and then ask your personal reaction to what I'm trying to suggest in it. And if the round table can play that video for everyone to watch, we'll come back to it and go live once it's finished.
In the correspondence on the blog that I had with Peter Bell, I asked a series of questions. One was, how many people do you think have read the original act that's covered the first referendum in 2014? It's produced in 2013. It's 164 pages of small legal print. Very few people in the Yes movement, and I'm not accusing anyone of anything, have actually gone through that. When I was 17, I was taught to read small print. It's a habit of mine now. I read small print. It's geekish, I know, I apologise. But when you read that small print, I'm going to come on to this in a second, what if there's a flaw in it of some kind? What if there's something we didn't realise? It's to do with timescales. That's a copy of the referendum bill, an extract from it, that's currently going through the Scottish Parliament. Now remember, what happened was that the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, said she wanted to go down the path of a Section 30 request and a referendums bill. Now, that referendums bill that's going through isn't specific to an independence referendum. Encompasses any referendum. I don't think that the First Minister wrote the details in that. I think it will have been the civil service. Nicola Sturgeon has called it the gold standard. So imagine you were a civil servant that was asked to produce the referendums bill. What would you instinctively do? In my opinion, you would go back to the Act in 2013 for the 2014, and to a large extent you would copy and paste, because that was the gold standard. Remember in the previous clip I talked about the Electoral Commission needing 12 weeks to consider a question. I want to read you something in clause 39 in the current referendums bill that's going through Parliament. I'll read you the whole lot. It says, restriction on legal challenge to a referendum result. No court may entertain any proceedings for questioning the number of ballot papers counted or votes cast as certified by a counting officer or by the chief counting officer, unless the proceedings are brought by way of a petition for judicial review. The petition is lodged before the end of the permitted period. In subsection 1b, the permitted period means the period of 6 weeks, beginning with the day on which the officer in question makes the certification as to the number of ballot papers counted. 6 weeks, folks. Now, I mentioned much earlier on, remember how much was handed and given to Alex Salmond as part of his judicial review? £500,000. So let's say after the next referendum, someone or groups of people across Scotland have seen something that they think was wrong. Maybe it was the number of postal votes. Maybe it was how they were counted. Maybe like the EU referendum, there's a huge number just haven't been returned. Maybe it's the scale of the number of postal votes, all dealt with in earlier clips. Maybe you have to raise £500,000, hire a QC, and get that all into the Court of Session within a period of 6 weeks. Not 12 weeks to discuss a question and decide on it, 6 weeks. That to me is fundamentally wrong. The statute of limitations, which normally applies to anyone's complaint about something, is 6 years. We need to consider as a yes movement asking our members of the Scottish Parliament whether they think any problem arising can be dealt with in 6 weeks. Maybe we've got to start considering individual discussions with our MSPs. Maybe we've got to discuss a petition going into the Scottish Parliament. Maybe, like everything I've tried to raise through all these clips, is there are questions to be raised, not speculative. Everything I've done is based on hard documentary evidence, and I'm inviting other people to take part in all of this discussion, whoever they are, whatever their views, not because I'm right, but because the questions need to be asked. Thank you for watching all of these clips. I'm grateful. I hope I haven't bored you to tears. It's done for the yes movement, because as Graham Brown's song says, this time we will win. Sir Alba.
Not anymore. Sorry, I couldn't get the volume down on the laptop. So.
No, you're okay. Listen, I'm not going to say anything, Dan. React to what you've just seen.
I 100% agree with what you just said. What can you do in 6 weeks? Nothing. That seems really inappropriate, actually. I didn't know anything about that, but 6 weeks is no. Yeah, that conversation needs to be had, and that needs to be changed.
That was done last November, and in the course of the Referendum Scotland bill going through Parliament, it was a Labour MSP that said 6 weeks seems awful short, and Michael Russell said, maybe it is, we'll make it 8 weeks. But unbelievable. Now, it's not just the weeks that are too short, it's the amount of money that you might have to raise to take an action through the Court of Session.
Of course.
What I've done since then, at the end of the video, I said maybe you need to speak to your MSP. Now remember, this was before it became an act that I was saying this. And then I said maybe we need a petition. So I deliberately, because nothing was happening, to seem to amend that as it went through the Parliament, I put a petition in. Now it started I lodged it last November. The clerks for the committee, who are brilliant, came back to me and said, we need to maybe tweak that a wee bit, or do you want all of the background of the videos? There was a whole series of videos I did about how you can manipulate voting systems, etc. It takes you back into the blockchain, if you like.
Okay.
So they then said, right, that's it, ready to go. So it goes open for anyone to comment on it. I didn't push it at all because I saw a time for this to become more public, which is why I wanted it done today. Then it was officially lodged. You get it open and then lodged, and it was lodged in March. The Petitions Committee take things in a series. So you just watch your petition slowly come up to the top of the series, which is weird for me. Again, I'll take this back to the People's Assembly. If something is I'm not saying mine is, but I think it is, but if something is absolutely critical, right? Like it would be if the Petitions Committee had one saying, we're actually quite worried there's a virus coming called COVID. Yeah. And they say, well, you'll need to wait until we get to that petition. That strikes me as kind of funnily wrong. But anyway, yes. It got to near the top and the Parliament recessed. So it's only going to come into vogue and it back into play probably back in September when they come back. But here is the critical part of this. What the committee did, or the committee clerks did, is they sent it to the body in the Parliament, which is called SPICE, the place where all the MSPs get their information, you know, where they will do detailed research. It's very similar to what goes on in the UK Parliament, where you'll get briefings given out to the MSPs, because not every MSP or MP will know enough about something. So SPICE did a report. And if you go to the petitions website on the Scottish Parliament, you'll see what SPICE said. They basically followed through everything I was saying. We need to get this watertight. And the final paragraph is, the Parliament has to adhere to the Human Rights Act. Scottish ministers have a specific duty to adhere to the Human Rights Act. And if legislation goes through which is in breach of the Human Rights Act, such as right to a fair trial, the whole act can be struck down. I.e., if we're going to have a referendum on anything, whether it's independence or whether it's we should stop the trams running in Edinburgh, whatever the referendum is, we've got an act at the moment which I believe, because I was trained to read small print, and this is section 39 of a 160-odd page document. I read it and I said, that's wrong. There's an easier way of dealing with this. And I'll nearly finish on this. You'll know yourself if you follow Facebook pages. A lot of people will mention IDOCs and say, that's a Tory minister, that's a director of that, and they're in charge of counting. In one of the videos, I discount IDOCs. I think there's bigger risks with this. But if you go through all the videos I did, you end up in the conclusion of saying, we can be extremely naive in Scotland. And even where ministers are doing the right thing, like setting up a Referendums Act, as I said in that video, what I think happened, either deliberately or not, is they copied from the original, inverted commas, gold standard. Right? It's what a person would do if you're told, get an act through Parliament, you'd copy it. That's where I think the danger is, because it's not so much also the fact that it impoverishes who we are as yes if we see something. It also allows the unionists, because they're very clever at times, if they know that's there, and it was one of the dangers I had in posting what I've done in doing the petition, is you're alerting the unionists to have a referendum Scotland, that's fine, but when you win, we're just going to say it's got to be struck down because the act was wrong. What, in my opinion, and I'll refer to Martin Keating's for a second, what, in my opinion, the Parliament should have done is set up an ombudsman service. I'm used to dealing with financial ombudsmen. I've spent a good part of my life dealing with them. When something is wrong, how do you appeal it? I've given help to people to go through the ombudsman system. If someone said, look, I think IDOCS was manipulating something, an ombudsman say, right, give me the evidence for that. And if it's just speculation, no hard evidence, the ombudsman could get rid of it.
Of course.
If we saw, that's exactly what happens with financial complaints. If you've got the evidence, the ombudsman will make basically an impartial, it's meant to be decision. Martin Keating's at the moment, with his ombudsman times the health position he's in, would completely disagree with me, but I've got a lot of experience of them. If, however, evidence was given to the ombudsman, which the ombudsman said that is factually correct, something went badly wrong here, without expense, without having to spend £500,000 and only have 8 weeks to do it in, the ombudsman could declare it as being a valid point. That can go back to the Parliament, and the Parliament can decide whether or not something went wrong and do something about it. Why Mike Russell in taking that through, why the civil servants weren't alive to the fact there are ombudsmen for all sorts of complaints in civil society. That's the way they should have gone, in my opinion. If I'm ever called to give evidence to the Petitions Committee, that suggestion, that is what I'll be putting forward. But what the petition physically says is, I'm calling on Parliament to re-look at the situation, look at what Spice have said, and if they think they're absolutely correct and it's watertight, I'll stop arguing. But if there's any suspicion, if they think everyone's got £500,000 and they can provide all the evidence in 8 weeks, I want to know who they've identified in the yes community that's actually that person.
Yeah.
I've shut up, Dave.
What you're saying there, Mike, is something I've talked to you about before. It's basically that on the 31st of December this year, the Human Rights Act will fall. So basically, at the end of the day, after the 1st of January, like, the referendum's bill will be valid. It's only if the referendum is called before the end of this year that will actually take effect.
No, it's whether or not the Parliament amend Section 39 of the existing Act to remove what they put in at the moment and replace it with a better wording. See, in the majority of cases, if you have a complaint about something, you bought the wrong goods, you've been on holiday and you're not happy with what happened, you have a statute of limitations in which you can raise a complaint. There's no statute of limitations other than the Referendums Act, Scotland, which says you've got to do it in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
No complaints procedure that only gives you 8 weeks to do it in.
Yeah, but my point is that if you're saying that, in particular with the referendums bill, that it contravenes the Human Rights Act, with the Human Rights Act no longer being like...
Yeah, you're correct, Dave.
Yeah.
It takes you back into timescales.
Yeah.
What I'm watching is very simply, is starting last November, will the Petitions Committee get round to my petition by this November? That's
of course.
That's the timescale. And will the Parliament pay any attention? You get it. I understand MSPs and government ministers, they're bombarded with stuff from everywhere. Joanna Cherry made reference to that only recently when she said, I'm flooded with ideas from everyone, but I've got to tell them they're maybe not workable. So I don't expect necessarily Mike Russell to... I would hope maybe someone would say to him, there's this idiot put in a petition that you maybe should pay attention to. Would he? I don't know. But I'm hoping the petition has enough power behind it, not because I've said it, but because Spice have confirmed exactly the point I'm raising. You may have a dodgy Act of Parliament and you maybe have to have a look at it.
We maybe need to get Mike on and have a wee talk with him about it.
Yes. I'm thinking actually an interview with Mike on this, like maybe a half-an-hour discussion sounds good. What do you think, Mike?
I'd be happy, but I've more interest. The thing is either wrong or it's right. It's as simple as that. And if people in Parliament are asked to consider it, the idea of moving it from 6 weeks to 8 weeks is just I just laughed when I saw that. I said, what the hell do you think 8 weeks is going to achieve that 6 weeks wouldn't? It's just
exactly.
It's just too short a period.
It was almost like I've changed it because somebody said I should, but I'll change it to something equally as pointless, I would say, really. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything at all. It's like we recognise there's a problem, but we're not going to fix said problem.
Section 39 is the very last part of the whole Act. And I'm quite sure after the committee that was looking at it, I mean, there was experts gave testimony to the whole, there was 2 committees looking at it. Not one of them raised this point. I just think they think from 2013 Act was the gold standard. So you just wade your way. Maybe they just get tired by the time they got to section 39.
Yeah.
And it was a Labour MSP said 6 weeks, maybe you should make that 8. And Mike Russell said, that's not a bad idea, let's just make it 8. Can we all go home now? And I have the feeling that's maybe what took place. I'm the idiot that sits down and says, well, no, I don't think this is right. Anyway.
But at least we have someone like you, Mike, to do that, to sit down and actually look at it and say, I don't think this is right. And this is where I see the Assembly playing a much, much larger part in making sure that things are right, because we should be the ones that are driving it. By allowing politicians in the civil service to drive this, you've just given a perfect example of how it can go fundamentally wrong. Whereas if we were the ones driving it and we'd already said what we require, then we instruct our government to do that, and then they have to put it back to us and say, okay, you said this is what you wanted, what do you think of this?
Sovereign people.
The People's Assembly was partly why I raised that specifically. It's got a specific importance, in my opinion, to what we're trying to achieve in independence when it comes to a referendum. Set that aside, it's back down. Dave knows this. Dave and I have 2 different ways of looking at what we've been doing with Twa Auld Heids. He knows I want to bang on about the people are sovereign, and it's sovereignty that will get us through this. But everything we do narrows everything down. So if there's 4 million can vote, 2 million maybe are going to vote yes, but we then pass it down to a political party which has got 124,000 in it, plus the other parties coming along. They then have a conference where Chris McElhenney will ask for permission to do something. It'll either be found competent to be discussed, moved off station, and we're suddenly down to how many people are deciding that? Let's say it's 50 people. And I sit down and scratch my head and say, you can't run a country if you keep narrowing it down to the smallest denominator of opinion. You've got to widen it out to everyone.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's the thing with independence as a whole. And I think to be honest, this is my honest opinion, but I think in 2014 they got the argument fundamentally wrong. First of all, they allowed the narrative to be set around the economy and around politics, rather than the narrative should be set around we are a sovereign people, isn't it about time we made our own decisions? Because it really is essentially as simple as that. There's not, and as you say, the yes movement, or the independence movement, as I would say, so the 2 million slightly plus people we have out there that we believe support independence, that are not part of political parties, that are not part of the yes activist group, that are not on Facebook, that are not, none of them are being represented. None of them are getting their voices heard. We don't even know what they think. You know, so to have that assembly to find that out, and for us to be a collective, I do see is, because you're never going to sell SNP politics. It's Marmite that either love or hate. You know, and the same with any other political party. It's not about the political parties. It's about us getting together and deciding how we want the country run. In the same way, it's not SNP v Tory. It's not left versus right. It's not capitalism versus socialism. It's about having a grown-up conversation about how do we want to see our country run. Now, it's not necessarily going to fit into one of those categories. It could just be this is how we see it working. But why do we need to stick to these labels? Because by doing that, we're dividing each other. Get rid of all the labels, get the assembly, and just get people's ideas, people's thoughts, people's priorities, people's problems even. You know, I was actually having a think the other day about the assembly could actually have an agony page on it where people within their local communities have had a problem with their council, or have had a problem with their water supply, and they could put that on there, and it could help us discover where all the problems are, and then talk about the ways that we could fix it collectively. And once you remove political parties and left and right, you're far more successful speaking about things like that in that way.
You're now drifting into where I started talking about the yes economy. That's part of what's in my thinking. I won't go into that in detail. Let me just back up. It's not me I'm talking about in that video. It's people like, my favourite probably is Indie Truck Davy, right?
Yeah.
When you watch Davy do his broadcast in the morning, he is covering, he's better than the BBC. Sorry, that's a bad comparison. He is so much better than any other news broadcaster. Forget what I just said. At giving you news which is focused on how we in Scotland should be thinking and reacting to things.
Yes.
Now, how much am I paying for Davy to do that? Nothing. Right? That is the way you sit down and say, right, is he educating me? By God, is he educating me? That is what should be happening. That's what I'm hoping Dave and I are maybe trying to do with the Twa Auld Heids, is to take a person who's got a point of view and try and draw it so that other people can understand what that point of view is and make their mind up. Dave, you're sitting there looking, I saw you earlier on totally excited about everything you've been doing today. You're drifting away. Are you watching your fan base?
No.
Are we?
I was just listening.
We're not boring you, are we, Dave?
Not at all.
If we are, we're going to play your song again.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Could do that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right, here we go. Right. Okay.
Okay, have you got a bunch of flowers ready for him, Diane?
I do. Hang on a sec.
What?
The people at the round table, can we have another go at this man's song, please?
No.
Here you are, Dave.
Thank you. Listen, you've been told it's not happening.
We've been told it's not to happen.
It's been banned by the advertising guys.
Well, so have you guys enjoyed the day? Actually, have you enjoyed your week, your Plan B week? I'd have to say that the Yes groups was fantastic. That was brilliant. You should do that all the time. In fact, that should be a weekly thing where Yes groups come on and just give their views, because it's interesting hearing it from all these different groups across the country.
It was basically when we put the idea together, we were going to get Chris on. And then it just grew arms and legs, and it was a chance to because we didn't know what Plan B was either. I'd actually put a poll up on Twitter before we did the interview with Chris, saying, "Like, okay, what do you think Plan B is?" And I gave 4 different things, and they were all sort of pretty. There wasn't one go over 50% of all the votes, and everybody had different ideas. And I realised at the time, I didn't know what it was either, and then Chris gave us a copy of it, and basically it was the third thing on my poll, which I actually, the majority of seats I think will get you a referendum. I don't think it'll get you independence. But as I say, Chris then said that but if people at the conference on the house that they can amend it, in which case. I mean, if I was in the SNP, which obviously I wouldn't be, but if I was in the SNP and sitting in that conference, I would try to amend it to the fact that if you get a popular vote majority, that you declare independence. But if you only get a majority of seats, you go for the advisory referendum. But once again, you're back to the same thing. All independence parties' votes must count towards that if you're going for it on a popular vote, in which case somebody needs to take a lead and everybody else has to agree that they're going to follow the word on one policy on their manifestos. And I think that could be done. Whether because at the end of the day, you don't get to be a politician if you've not got an ego. I mean, you have to have a certain ego. Well, apart from Philippa Whitford, I think she's got to be the least egotistic politician I've ever met. but almost everybody else has one, and they wouldn't be able to be a politician without one. So I think it might be quite difficult to draw those strands together, given the fact that some people seem to be more interested in independence than others. And I'm not having a go at parties here. I'm having a go at certain people in a lot of different parties. The soft independence thing is actually worse than unionism.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you on that. I think it can be done. I think it's possible, but then anything's possible. I'm that type of person. But there has to be a will to want to do it. And I think that's where your problem may come in. And I do think, whilst I wouldn't say I dislike the SNP, of course I vote SNP, I want my independence at the end of the day. But I think you're now looking at a party that's been in power for 12 years in Scotland, and there's an element of them that doesn't want to lose that power. So that, of course, is where the biggest problem comes in. However, they don't represent as many people as they should if they were serving the needs of that pro-indie movement within Scotland, because they would have engaged so many more people. And I think my issue is on the engagement. I've been involved at branch level as well for a short period of time, I would say. So that gave me a great insight into it. But I think it's just the whole problem with political parties. Should we not just be people representing people? Do we need political parties? I think that's my thing, because as soon as you sign up to a party, you put party before your people. And we've seen this so much with it, even within the Brexit situation. You've seen it so much where you've ended up where the constituents have voted in the opposite way to their MP, their MSP, whoever their elected representative is. But that elected representative still carries on following an agenda that's in complete opposition to their constituents. That shouldn't exist.
You saw that very much in what happened over Brexit.
Yeah,
where you
exactly.
had a cabinet, at Downing Street, where they're meant to say, right, we'll have a discussion, and then that is the government's line. You must agree with it, even if you think it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard in your life.
Yeah.
So you had people leaving the cabinet for that reason. You had people crossing the divide in the parliament and leaving the party behind. And that is where you do hit that problem. Warn you, however, Diane, I think, how long after the Day of Independence? I think we'll be celebrating for a long time before this breaks out. But you're going to see a massive amount of political parties start up in Scotland.
Yeah.
There's going to be arguments galore. I just hope to live long enough to watch it. I don't want to take part in it. I just want to watch it.
Yeah, there is an element of entertainment in it, to be fair, isn't there? Yeah, I mean, there is that argument we do still need political parties, but in actual fact, and this is where you'll know yourself, Mike, I 100%, and I still do support, in essence, the AFI party, the Max the Yes that Pat was on speaking about earlier, and I did get involved with some of the work within the steering group, and the reason being is because the whole idea and concept behind the AFI was that the Yes groups got involved, and the Yes groups were the ones that nominated the candidates. So essentially it was the people within the communities that were able to nominate the people within their regions that they could see had the experience and the passion and the determination to go and fight for their people. So we were, through AFI, there is a huge mechanism to get just indie supporters out there who have done their research, who have worked within their communities, who do prioritise their people to get out there and to take a stand and go and represent the regions, because they're the ones that know what they want. But by doing it on their own, they don't have that party manifesto that they have to follow or subscribe to. And it gives them more freedom to actually represent.
The problem you always have in these things, we three are in a bubble. The Yes movement's in a bubble. But there's people at the moment who don't know that they're going to have a job tomorrow because of COVID.
Yeah.
There's people who don't know they're going to be able to pay the mortgage because of Brexit. In their ordinary lives, they will not hear about Alliance for Independence. Getting the message through to people who are not day-to-day involved in politics is why you end up with politicians who come out with catchphrases like "take back control," because they know that's the, and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, because that's the only. That is where the problem. It's where the problem comes in with getting independence. We know there has to be a campaign. We know there has to be leaflets going through the door. We know that some of those leaflets are just going to go straight into the bin. That is always the biggest problem of this. It's something we have to address and work our way around. There was a period, if you think back, there was a period where reframing became the topic amongst the bubble, right? We're now into, I have absolutely no doubt, don't ever get me wrong in this, that how the list vote has been undiscussed because of SNP 1 and 2 has been something that we had to address. It's very, very important. If nearly half the MSPs come from the list, and they happen to be a majority of unionists, we're doing something wrong. We've got to think our way through that.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of people there against it. The person I wouldn't ignore in that's James Kelly. You've got to get, in his way of working things, at least 5 to 6% return to get anywhere with a list MSP. That's why I come back to this common message position. If I knew that I was voting for the SNP who had laid out a plan which ISP, AFI, I always called them AFI good, but AFI or whatever else, the Greens, Solidarity, SSP, we're all signed up to the same wording, then it makes it less difficult. People talk about splitting the vote. There are 2 votes. One is going to go to the SNP. Let's make the other one effective. I don't think we're there yet. That's why I left, because I was going to cause problems with some of my opinions.
Yes.
Right?
I can vouch for that also.
I may well come back into arguing about it, but I think they've got to launch first. You've got to see. Pat Lee you did an interview with him. Pat makes a lot of good comments in that. I'm not arguing with that. It wasn't the principle I was in. It was just basically, I thought, you haven't thought all this through. Dave's got his method. I'll bring you back in, Dave, to see how you're doing it, but you've got your method of establishing your working steering committee in your locality. How have you done that?
Well, I can't actually talk about it too much before the launch, but I can tell you basically what I've done. I've got in contact with people in this area that are activists. One who gave up his SNP membership to actually do it, and who are well respected in the yes community. And then basically we worked out who was going to invest at what, and then just said, right, okay, right, that you're in charge of that, you're in charge of that, you're in charge of that, covering the most important things you have to do. And then we're talking about people who've bust in, like supports to get an SNP councillor elected in Pennycook. Like Cliff is good with actually doing PowerPoint things. So I mean, as far as you can set up meetings day after day after day, the PowerPoints will be the same. It's always to follow. So we're sort of trying to do stuff that way, but and gradually we'll spread out and build our network for there. And we're pretty much been given our head by the steering group. As I say, there were questions about that before. I said that it has to be local democracy, or you're just the same as everybody else. And it was basically when I was assured that that's how it was going to work. That's when I came back and said, right, okay, I'll do it for you. But I'm only doing it up to September. As I say, basically, I'm coming in to help to try and build the framework. And then in September, they're going to have their conference and they can vote somebody else to do my job. I'll have helped to build it by that time. And because I've got no interest in the politics side of it at all. Independence. I'm not interested in being sitting in Parliament. I'd much rather stand at the side of the road down in Berwick and cause havoc than sit in Parliament and completely bore my tits out.
Yeah.
Dave and Diane, we were asked to continue up to a certain time. We're now approaching that time.
Yeah.
Dave, could you and I be gentlemen?
Yes.
Thank Diane for joining us. Diane, you've done a hell of a lot of work for today's event. I think we should leave you with whatever final words you want to say to everyone.
Could I just say something before she?
Of course you can.
She's got this absolutely brilliant idea about shining messages on the side of buildings, and I'm quite into that thing as well. And I need to talk to you about it more soon. Go on, you go.
Great. Just ping me a message, Dave, anytime. Yeah, lots more. I like all the fun stuff. And one of the things I would say about today is it was fun, but it was a huge learning curve. I only came across the covenant myself in February sometime. So it was a massive, and I'm a technophobe also. So I have no idea. My hat goes out to the tech team that are behind all of this at the round table in the covenant, because man alive, they've had a lot of patience with me. And I will have to say a personal thank you to Peter Steele, because he has held my hand so much in getting all this stuff done. I just got involved because I want people to know about all these things that are floating around, and I wanted to learn about it myself. And actually working with you guys in the groups and things is so much fun that I am more than happy to do anything you ask. So yeah, bung ideas my way. I'm more than happy to run around and carry them out for you. But thank you for having me on, and well done on your Plan B week. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more from you guys in the future. So thanks.
I think it's going to be a Plan B fortnight by the time we're finished, or maybe a Plan B month.
That's all right. That sounds good to me.
I'm going to say bye-bye.
Yeah, see you later.
Okay, well, we've done 1320 to 1707, so you know what that means.
It means cheers.
I'll
see you later, guys.
I'm away to watch a video of someone at the border.
I have to catch up on that myself. Thanks for watching, guys. It's been fun. We'll be on again, probably on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.